Hello.
Hi.
Hey there, everybody, and welcome back to Divulgence. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Jordan Vezeau, and today I am very excited to welcome our guest. She is a galactic walk-in who came into this realm and human body in 2001 via the genetic portal known as the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. Since then, she has focused her efforts on sharing the concept and form of the flying rainbow lasagna with others via painting, sculptures, teaching, and music. I'm very happy to have her. Please help me welcome Aurora. Hi, how are you today, Aurora?
I am wonderful. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Thank you so much for coming. It really is a pleasure. So, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really good. I've been getting tons of things done. I do music production. I just set up a thing on Fiverr for that. So, it's like an online marketplace of different skills.
That's how I got my logo, actually.
Very good. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
great thing. So I did that. I did a lot of, I feel very productive. And also, like, I literally just moved in. I've been in San Diego for like about a week. So my place looks so bare. I haven't gotten my pictures on the wall. So I put a little something back here, but my backdrop looks very bare tonight.
That's okay. That's a fun experience putting your spaces together. So
Wait, I have to get to the hardware store and actually get nails in order to put everything up and make it look good.
wonderful. That's so great.
What are the topics that you would like to cover, you would like for our conversation to cover tonight?
Honestly, with regards to my show in general, there's so many topics I want to cover. So it's hard to sometimes just pick and choose. So I'm usually open to talking about just about anything for the most part. The show itself kind of revolves around history and scandal and conspiracy and
Okay.
true crime and as well as politics and the bigger stuff like spirituality and the world and talking about space and did we go to space or is space real? What is the earth? Is the earth flat? Is the earth this? Or talking about different energies and entities and all that different stuff. So it's not just a true crime podcast. It's not just a conspiracy podcast. I love talking about all sorts of different stuff. So I've only got 11 episodes right now, but I'd like to talk about all sorts of different stuff.
Space and spirituality and exopolitics and the true nature of reality and the cosmos and all of that. That's all things that I talk about and feel very comfortable in swimming around in those waters.
Wonderful. And that's why I wanted to bring you on. And so that's great.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you so much for coming on. I'm so happy. And it's nice that you reached out once you moved. You didn't forget. So I really do appreciate that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And my move was wild. Like I thought I had a good place set up. I got here with my moving truck. It ended up falling through. So I had to find an apartment last minute. So all of that was a wonderful life challenge. And now that is like, things are set. Now it's like, okay,
good.
now down to more fun and satisfying things to do with my time.
That's excellent. That's so good to hear.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to get the ball rolling, to get everything started here, why don't you tell me and our viewers a little bit about yourself, some of your different works, and we can move on from there.
Thank you so much. Thank you for just giving me a little time to tell. I'll give you everything. I'll just
take as much time as you need. And I mean that. Go for it.
Thank you. So yeah, I use the term walk-in, and I didn't initially have that when I first came here. I've been here for 20 years in my mission, my earthly assignment here, which I'm surprised and gratified that I'm here for 20 years. I thought that initially things would be done by 2003, and then it would be like, hooray, like snap your fingers, everything is positively improved. But it's been a very long gig. So I call myself a walk-in. I got that term from a book that I read very early on when I was here called ET 101, the handbook. A more accurate term for me is, so I'm Aurora when I am not here occupying a physical human form and presence. I'm an abstract waveform. So like an abstract frequency being that does not usually have a physicality presence. And also I live a concurrent life of being here in a human genetic body that has its own particular unique song or frequency that I'm creating by being in this body, and also concurrently or outside of the boundaries of time, space, and dimensionality. Like, if this is the bubble of time and space, outside of that bubble, I exist in a timeless time as a collective of consciousness. And I've been talking about this with people on Earth in this world for a very long time. And when I first started saying I'm part of a collective, a lot of times people would go right to Star Trek and they'd say, oh, like the Borg. And like, no, I'm not down on the Borg.
Okay.
I'm not down, because I used to be very like anti-transhumanism and all these things. And I have learned, you know, I have more of a moderate position now, but I have to clarify that my Aurora collective is a 100% natural or naturally occurring, but biological or formerly biological based telepathic society or larger organism of telepathy that is intimately connected with the stars themselves. That beginning in this conversation to talk about the idea of stars as living presences, that in this world, science describes stars as just being like giant hot balls of plasma, and that the light that is emitted, or the frequencies and the various different things that are emitted, are merely, you know, energies. But it's really important to understand that stars are alive beings, like just like humans. They have a lifespan, like a birth, a coalescence, a coming together, a time of being generative, and then also a time of collapsing into themselves, or a death, and then the death journey of what they experience too. So all of those things, like stars have a lifespan, have a consciousness, and what they emit in terms of energy is intelligence. And they're actually like a neurology in the larger field of outside of this realm. Like up there, out there, each one of the stars could be considered one neuron. So we are in this world, on Earth, or wherever we are defining this place as, we would be considered like one little tiny neurotransmitter, not even a full neuron. But what we are here in this place, with all the things that we're doing with human culture, is just like one little tiny signal carrier in the solar system, which is itself a neuron, which is connected to a great brain. And my thought structure, who I am as Aurora, is connected to that great brain. So I have this name because the aurora on Earth and the aurora on other planets is the phenomenon that arises when you have solar wind, which is, if this is the sun over here, the sun is emitting all sorts of not only visible light, but all sorts of particles and high energy and all of these things that are coming. If there were not a magnetic field around a planet, it would just simply fry the planet and it would not be able to support organic life. So there's not only an atmosphere around the planet, but there is a toroidal shaped magnetic field. And when we get into the torus, when I first came here, people did not really know what the torus or the donut shape was all about. So over decades now, that's become more filtered into collective consciousness. But the torus is the precursor to the flying rainbow lasagna, which is a type of hypertorus. So the magnetic shield that is around Earth or other planets collects and disperses those particles and sends them to the poles and creates these ring-like phenomenons of glowing light that are at the poles. That's called the aurorae. So the aurora, the phenomenological world, is the end result of the combination of the sun and an earthly presence or a magnetic field. And that's what I am. I'm a waveform that comes from the sun and the stars, that entire brain network that's up there, out there, with the earthly presence of a person. And the story of what happened was there was an actual death, like not just a near-death experience, but an actual death, a metabolic death of this body form. And I came in as a waveform to not only keep the body alive, but and also to like continue this life trajectory. That if you could think of every life as being like a timeline or like a waveform like this, that it's woven into a giant tapestry, that if all of my fingers are like other people's lives and timelines, all of these lives get woven together. And that, you know, if you cut enough threads in the tapestry, then it becomes frayed and then begins to lose integrity. And then you can lose the entire sweater, the entire reality sweater. And in order to maintain the integrity of the reality sweater, I, as a waveform consciousness, perceived the ongoing metabolic death of this person. And I made a spontaneous decision to jump in. And the jump in was through this genetic portal, which, by the way, had not been invented before. So this is the whole reason, like when it speaks a lot to the question of why does suffering exist? Why do bad things happen? Why do negative things happen? I feel what was happening was a very negative thing to this person's life. And it opened up an opportunity in that moment for a spontaneous generation of something new that is this waveform shape that has then created a cascade of events that I consider to be very positive. So it was literally just my 20th anniversary of walking in. It was on October 9th of 2001. And now it's been literally 20 years of lasagnaing. Ding, like if I were
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you for that. Yes. And, you know, I laugh and I smile about it now, but it used to be an anniversary that I didn't want to celebrate because it was very poignant, but filled with trauma. Like a real death happened and there was has been neurological damage, all those things. Like clearly I've done a ton of healing in this body in order to be able to be here and be in it. And that's also part of what this flying rainbow lasagna, or we can shorthand, we can say FRL for shorthand, or just lasagna for it being so long. But that's part of what this genetic ability or new format does. So I came into this body through this portal, because you have to also understand not only are the sun and the stars portals for consciousness, but your DNA in your body is a transceiver, a frequency antenna that both sends and receives, and can be a portal for consciousness, that it is possible to tune in to different realities by changing and facilitating genetic behavior. And that what I did was take the ordinary dance movements of this body and change it and modify it so that I, as this supernatural or otherworldly presence, could be here in this body. But I also jump in and out. I'm also in that body at that level of reality too at the same time. So I know that our language structure here is very linear, and it's not set up for these type of timey-wimey conversations about, usually our conversations are about past, present, future. And this is really about concurrence, because I'm living concurrently outside of time and also submerged in time. It's a lot of plates to keep juggling at the same
right. Yeah.
It's a very strange existence to be able to do this. And my whole purpose for being here, like I said, was not just to keep this particular body alive and, you know, to maintain the integrity of the woven tapestry of time, but also to share this concept. That was a huge motivator for me, that I really made a decision of like, once I created this, it's like when you have a new thought or you write a new song in the world, any new kind of innovation, it exists as its own thought form. Like other people will find it. You know, you could call it collective consciousness, or people around here use the shorthand, they call it the 100 monkey syndrome. If something is floating out there as just a generalized concept, once you think a thought or invent something, it's there, it's present in the world, and thoughts are alive beings too, and others can perceive it and access it. I wanted to personally bring this concept to the world and share it with people here, because I thought like, well, it might take 500 years. It might take however long it takes for this concept to actually percolate through into humanity and into the world, and then do the positive ripple effect of spreading outward. And I didn't want everyone to have to wait that long, because I feel that this is a very worthy concept that can be used as a rectifier, as a rectification, like changing course. Like if you're moving in this direction, but things are not quite right in time, a rectifier, a way of changing the steering wheel, turning in a better direction, both personally as an individual in your life moving through time, and also as a society, as a collective, and as Earth as a collective organism, or this realm, depending upon how people view the realm, you know, this level of reality, let's say, to use impeccable language, as a collective organism of many other DNA-bearing organisms, and the consciousness envelope itself that we are existing within, and that all of that can experience a positive improvement through this flying rainbow lasagna rectification, genetic oscillation, because it's all connected through time. I know that was like the world's longest.
No, that's fine.
Ever.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Thank you. I appreciate you sharing everything that you're willing to share.
Thank you very much. So the different ways that I share these ideas, like I said, I was telling you when I first started with this broadcast with you, I literally just moved into a new place. So my place looks very bare back here. I just have one wrapped up painting, but I do a lot with paintings. So yeah, you can see like the patterns on my shirt.
Yeah,
so
groovy.
I do. They're very extensive, measured out, but I don't use a computer. So all of these are you know, I use measuring tools and templates to draw perfect circles. But other than that, I like to say I am the computer, and I do these very detailed, they're like maps of time. And then after I do the paintings, I also, years ago, I started having them made into fabric and made into clothing and things like that, because I want them to be in people's lives. Like all of this is like, how can I share this information with people on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis? So even if you are not a person that's in the position to afford an original piece of artwork, which, you know, could be out of the budget, I make clothing and other things like that that you can hang in your home, or prints. The idea is to surround yourself with these positive patterns and have that truth enter your eye, have that truth reflect colors into you. And then more recently, I also started speaking through music, that I do a lot of music now. I'm highly prolific. That music is another way of this nonverbal communication of concepts that might be so abstract that it's difficult, like our linear, timey-wimey language does not always support this level of information connection. It would be so much easier if we were just telepathic. I'd be like, I will just give you telepathic communication. But I know we're still working on achieving pure telepathy in this world. So I do through art, I do through music. And then I also do, and I have taught formally, an online class that is Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. And I started that one in 2013 because I had been doing just pure art and approaching this as just like a self-expression. And I realized it was time to like formalize things, because I kind of learned how people learn, that if I just show someone a painting, I'm like, here's this thing. And they're like, well, that's pretty, like, that's nice, but not necessarily understanding that I'm talking about time, timelines, dimensionality, probability, statistics is part of it, or the likelihood of something happening. The singularity is part of it. And then understanding and embodying singularity and what that is and how that relates to this shape. And also a whole teaching about what DNA is, separate or augmented to how it is described in the objective materialist science of this time. So I did that whole class, and I did that after, because remember, December 21st, 2012, like, I don't know where you were in that moment in your life, but there was a huge expectation of like, something big is gonna, like, ka-chunka, like something big is gonna happen. And then it kind of like, not wah-wah, but like only half. I felt like very unfulfilled. And I think a lot of people felt that too. We were ready for some kind of massive download, massive change, massive everything. And there was not something very visible that changed. So I was like, okay, like, pick myself up and kind of be like, okay, redirect. Now it's time to start classes. So I dubbed myself Professor Flying Rainbow Lasagna, and I created these classes, and I actually taught them for about 7 years. So that was up until 2019, 2020. And then we got the pandemic, which was again a complete change in, you know, the structure of human consciousness, what's going on the planet, human biology and human sociology. And so then I put a pause on all of those teachings, because I'm like, we're in through the looking glass zone, and now things are changing. And started making a lot of music as a way of expressing truth and a way of uplifting people on the journey, because I also find music is like a type of food for the ears, and that it can bring you, it can uplift you in good times, you can feel awesome in good times listening to it. It can like really help you stay aloft or whatever, even through very difficult crises or depressions or whatever. I write all of that type of stuff. So those are all the different things that I do. Thank you so. I know I just blah blah blah. Thank you so much for.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's so great. Is there any? I mean, is there anything you want to share visually or orally? If you can share some of your music, or if you want to do that later or now, anytime. Yeah, like I said, take as much time as.
Thank you. I do not want to be too focused on me, and I do not want to only be the only person speaking. I do have
no, that's fine. Share whatever you want, and then at the end of the show, we'll make sure to share your links and anything else that you want to share for people to get a hold of you.
I have some pictures lined up on my screen, and I have some video animations too of what this FRL shape is. And then, yeah, I absolutely have available. I've done a lot of music writing over the past year. I actually did 5 albums, which is, yeah. Like, you know, when I wake up in the morning, usually on a good day, the first thing I do is either turn on music to listen to or get right to whatever song I'm currently writing. And I find, again, like, using that level of my mind, using my ears in that way, it's a way of getting through difficulties. And I will share, like, I have found since 2020 and the pandemic and the various things that have been going on in our world, it's been a difficult world to exist in. Like, do you find greater levels of psychic pressure, stress, difficulty? Like, I definitely felt a ratcheting upward. What had been the boiling frogs, I felt like, oh, I am definitely boiling at a certain point.
Yeah, absolutely. It's at first it felt more like a gradual kind of turning up of the tempo, but then there was a time where it felt okay, geez, like it's gone from 1 to 10 immediately almost. And right now it seems it's kind of at a little bit of a standstill. I mean, that's the one of the frustrating things, is that there's so many different ways that it's being handled around the world. So it's hard to, if you're talking to someone that isn't in your city, things could be much different, right? And that could cause difficulties as well, depending on what the circumstances are. But it definitely will cause difficulties if it's a matter of wanting to travel and see someone, so that's why obviously communication has been such a more of a necessity and important thing for people to stay healthy and stay updated and stay connected.
There's also been this sense of impending urgency and also unpredictability since 2020. It's been like, wow, all of a sudden one day, like everything changes. Are you allowed to do this? Are you not allowed to do this? Things can change on a moment to moment basis. And I think a lot of people went into like frozen panic mode, like, and there's like a deer in the headlights, like, like, what do I do? Just stop, drop, and roll. And then also, I think some people kind of gave up a little bit. Like, that's it. Like, throw it all out the window. Like, I'm being fake dramatic. Throw it all away, in the sense of delving into hopelessness or frustration, or wondering, like, will businesses be why even bother opening a business? Will my business be open again? Why try to find a job? Will it be possible? Will any of these things, like, I know a lot of people who are afraid of, for lack of a better term, just the vernacular zombie apocalypse, either from some engineered lab grown goo that escapes, or from some injection, some medical treatment that turns everyone into a zombie. Like, there's people, like, I'm trying to say, people run the gamut of response to this crisis of uncertainty of what is happening. And I'm very much about, like, taking full responsibility and accountability for what comes out of my mind in terms of a thought or a waveform, creating or generating things in reality. So I've always been trying to talk to people and get them to understand you can align with the worst possibilities if you want to. Possibilities where you yourself become unhealthy, or your family members do, or significant portions of your community keel over and die. Like, that was the big fear that people had in early 2020. People would just be stacking up, it would be the new bubonic plague, and people would be stacking up corpses. Firewood, that it would be like any type of cautionary tale or fictional tale that any of us have read. And I want to reassure you, like, it doesn't have to be that way unless a person personally feels the need to walk that path and have those experiences. So I'm very big on the idea of personal accountability in the reality that you align with, even while you recognize that peripherally there might be real perilous timelines, real peril. Like, if you're walking on a balance beam, if you fall to the left or the right, sharks and piranhas everywhere. Like, it could be really bad if you go over that, or really bad if you go over there, but it doesn't have to be. And I feel like we've transcended so many of these cusps where it was like, well, that was where that bad thing could have happened, and that was where that bad thing could have happened. And we made it to this moment now, and we have not had like a giant die-off on the planet, and we have not had a giant catastrophe in terms of, some kind of like earth changes or something like that. So I'm very big on the idea that I feel like we're moving into a new level of reality, but it doesn't have to be a destructive experience. And we could even say that this is analogous to a personal death or a personal transformation, but it doesn't have to be a complete destruction. It can be turning over, or a renewal, or something new. So, Terrence McKenna, you know who I'm talking about?
Terrence McKenna? No, I don't.
If you don't know him, or if your audience or listeners don't know him, I highly recommend checking him out. Terrence McKenna, he's not on Earth anymore. He was a writer and an orator, and really gave some excellent speeches and teachings just a really good raconteur is a good word for him. Spoke very well, like could really weave a story together, and a great thinker. He did a couple of things. One of the things he did was popularize the psilocybe cubensis mushroom from Brazil into the United States. And like that was part of his, you know, whatever society breaking transformative work that he did, and making it available to people and cultivating it. Yeah, there you go. And he also did a computer program called Time Wave Zero, which is super interesting stuff. That was basically a historical algorithm.
He looks familiar.
Yeah, when there would be certain nodes or 0 points or cusps or times when, if you have a sine wave going up and down like this, there are certain times when all of the waves balance each other out and everything balances at that infinity point. And he calculated that December 21st, 2012 would be one of these cusps even before the Mayan calendar was translated. So it was just a really, he did that work in the early 1980s when computers were also very exotic and very inaccessible. And he was doing that algorithmic work. And at the same time, in the early 1980s, the Mayan hieroglyphs were being deciphered in order to be able to understand the math of the Mayan culture, their calendar, and how all of their predictions come together. So all of that backstory to say that he's a really, you know, an interesting genius type person, and that there you go. He gives a great speech. You can check it out. I'm sure it's on YouTube or something, about personal eschaton versus planetary eschaton. And eschaton meaning end of world. And he talks about the idea and expectation, like we have this personal expectation of the idea, you know, you're going to eventually die one day, and it will be like the destruction, the cataclysm, the worst thing that can possibly happen. And that is reflected culturally, not only in Western culture, like we have the Book of Revelation, which I think heavily influences human thought and mind here. Even if you don't consider yourself a Judeo-Christian, a lot of people think of the end of days and what that would be like. In Norse, there's Ragnarok, and in the Far East, you know, there's the Kali Yuga. All of these things, the idea of an end of the world, end of everything, destruction of everything. And I think that those expectations have heavily imprinted upon humanity. So he talks about, it makes a good mirroring of the idea of like, you expect yourself to have a cataclysm and die, and you expect the planetary structure to have a cataclysm and die. But I'm very big on the idea of renewal. Like I do believe in afterlife or after existence. And I think I'm a good example of that this, you know, this body, I would say I had a near-death experience or a real death experience, but clearly I am still here. I am still alive, walking and talking. We all agree, like this is a live experience, and that there is life beyond death, or let's say a spiritual presence or an intangible presence that we experience as pure consciousness after the physical form is destroyed, and that maybe it is possible to redefine what death even is, to not even see it as like my physical body keels over and then my etheric body floats away. Maybe we can, in this generation, redefine what that is, which is kind of the idea of Christian rapture, even though I'm not a literalist Christian, but I bring up all of these things. Like, you know, I came here as an otherworldly supernatural presence, and I had to learn about how do the people of this time and place view things. And I did actually like a survey of cultures, religions, the view of afterlife or after existence, in order to understand how people here in this time and place look at that level of consciousness. Because that's where I'm coming from, but I'm coming from it not in the sense of a land of the dead, but more in the sense of there is a presence outside of time, space, and dimensionality. It's like an all time is now type of presence. And it's even hard to describe to people who are embedded in time, experiencing a linear experience. A linear experience is like if my arm is a timeline, like you start out here and you walk along moment by moment, like now we're in the middle of the day and now we're getting to the end of the day. And then the next day you start out all again. It's very, very different when you see all time as now. The analogy that I like to use is, you know, an old fashioned movie strip. Like, again, this is like
absolutely, yeah,
old technology.
That's okay. I'm a huge classic movie fan, so yeah, I know what you're talking about. Sure.
So you get it. So to anyone who might not be familiar, like there used to be like a reel with movie on it, and it goes onto the empty reel, and there's like a strip tape, and the tape has different individual moments of time. that are all strung together, that all make this big, giant, long movie. And if it runs at the right rate, then it looks like everybody is moving instead of, standing still. And that's very much what we're experiencing. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. That's for anyone who's a young person or just unfamiliar, or who only knows digital technology, doesn't know anything about analog filmmaking. So every one of those little squares could be considered a moment of time. In timelines, it would be a moment at the Planck length, like moment. So there might be 10 million of them within 1 second, but you understand that they're little quanta or little segments of what time actually is. And if you could understand the all time is now viewpoint, it would be like if you took a whole big long tape that was the tape of your life and cut all of those squares up into individual squares and laid it all out on a big giant flat table. And then you were able to see whatever. Here, I'll use this, my little Post-it note, to pretend that this is a table. If this is a table, then you would see all of your life laid up all across there, starting with your birth over here, and then ending with your death over here. And you would be able to see everything all at once. That is the multidimensional viewpoint. So the multidimensional perceiver, like if I were to look at you, I would see this moment now, but then telescoping back all the way through your childhood, all the way to the moment of your birth and conception, I would be able to see all of those presences of you, those layers of you. And also I would be able to sense, moving forward from this moment, the anticipatory possibilities of all that you could possibly be. And that would be like a fan or a sphere or a half sphere spreading outward from you, because you're not just one particular road or timeline of time. You are a multiplicity of possibilities and probabilities, like unfolding outwards. And the interesting, fun, and cool part of our journey is to be a self-navigator, to be able to make conscious choices about what area of the time field one aligns with. And that's all what my work is all about. The idea of recognizing, so I'm very much about non-deterministic. Determinism is the idea like you're fated to do something, like you have one road, or you are an actor in a script and you're just following in your footsteps. I do this, I do this, I do this, I do this. And it largely takes away or diminishes the sense of free will to the experiencer. It's like, I'm determined, I'm fated to do this. It is written in the story of my life. Now I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go here. And I feel like it's a disempowerment story to tell yourself that and to experience that. And it's not entirely truthful in terms of cosmic structure, because there is so much about free will choice. Which direction do you choose to go from your present moment, like a trajectory? Like if you're a giant ship sailing at sea, like you can't turn at a 90-degree angle. Like it takes time. You have to turn in an arc. So there's that to understand. And also you are working in conjunction with cosmic forces, that there are larger currents of time, that even as you're trying to turn your ship of your life in the direction of a positive, in unfoldment, that there are larger waves, tsunamis, sometimes sea currents that affect and afflict your life. So our lives are really a combination of both things. Like there's some free will, and there's also some fate or determinism. And it's walking a fine line in your own journey to be held accountable and take responsibility for the things that are truly your responsibility. Like I chose that and I moved in that direction, but also recognize there are larger currents that are going on. And you can understand this. It's like, well, how come I couldn't just wave my magic wand and poof, like make my own perfect ideal thing that I want to have manifest, like with whipped cream and cherry on top? Like, it might not be possible because you're working within a larger context. And it's absolutely necessary to respect that larger context, because it's alive itself. Like we are like red blood cells that are traveling through a giant circulatory system of a much larger time-based being. So our pathway is complementary to the needs of the larger being. And that's everything about, I feel like, what we are learning on a cosmic level, like this schoolhouse that we're in, at being embodied creatures down here. We learn life lessons about mutual respect and partnership and living in community and all those types of things. We also learn about the balance of the individual and individual needs and self-centeredness versus the context, the cosmic context, which I, again, emphasize to everyone, is alive. Like time is alive. The cosmos is alive. The fabric of consciousness is alive. The sun and the stars and even the little tiny photons of light that they emit are alive. So alive and sentient and with their own agendas and with their own motivations for what they want to experience. And the true virtuosity of integrating yourself with all of this swirling infrastructure is the capacity that you balance out your own personal desires and what you need and what you intend for the world with what the world intends for you, but also what the world needs for itself. So, you're a little tiny red blood cell bouncing around through the body. You're supposed to be like, I want oxygen. Now I want to jump off oxygen. Now I want to get carbon dioxide. Now I want to get the lungs. Hooray. Like, that's what I'm supposed to do. And like, we're supposed to have personal motivations like that, knowing that that serves something that is larger and greater. So when you do it right, it's like musicians in a groove. Like you're in your own individual life groove, and then you're part of the larger cosmic consciousness fabric. And you can tell when you're in the groove when you have like tons of synchronicities. You might think a thought and all of a sudden someone says that on the radio, or the song lyrics say that on the radio, or you have a dream and it manifests in reality, and it begins to do a feedback loop. Like the things that are inside of you, you see reflected outside of you, and then that reflects back into you, and then you redirect, and then you go over here. And when you're really in the groove, you kind of bounce off of all of these things, like whatever, like the old fashioned, like a pinball machine, like you bounce off of all these little things.
Sure, yeah.
The events of reality, and you end up, getting the high score.
Wow, okay. So when you say time is alive, what do you mean by that? And this could be just me being silly, but when you have that feeling that time all of a sudden, like, oh geez, that hour just blew by, like it felt like 10 minutes, is that related in any way to how time acts as like a living thing? Or I mean, I don't know what.
Really, really good question. Very insightful. Time is not only alive, we breathe and have a blood flow, but time is a subjective presence. So you mentioned the phenomenon, time flies when you're having fun.
Sure.
The time spent like whatever in pain, like whatever, getting some painful medical procedure done, like clearly time inches along. Time, torture time takes a long amount of time. So all of that is about the idea of experienced moments, that not every moment is like a cookie cutter that is exactly the same and uniformly created through the time field, that there's actually a great deal of irregularity and uniqueness, unique qualities to each moment in time. And one of the great challenges that we face with disservices, I would say, is since time became mechanized in human consciousness, so that means the invention of a watch. Where's my watch?
Okay.
You're wearing a watch. Hardly anybody wears a watch anymore because everybody has cell phones. But
yeah, exactly.
The invention of clocks. So in human history, the way that people used to tell the time during the day was by looking at the passage of the sun. And maybe they had a sundial or some very rudimentary way of judging the shadows in order to tell roughly, like, I will meet you at high noon. We'll have the shootout at high noon.
Yeah.
But it was not like, I'll meet you at 12:17. They did not have that accuracy in measurement.
Okay.
And it wasn't until the invention of clocks, like there would be a bell tower in the town that then started to, ring the bells and mark people's lives into equalized segments. 60 minutes here, 60 minutes here, 60 minutes here. It changed human consciousness. It changed the way that people go through their day and experience time, where time used to be a more fluid experience, where, like you say, sometimes you might spend what feels like eternity, like William Blake, eternity in an hour. So, like you're sitting by a riverside in a beautiful place and it feels like you just sat there for forever. It changed the way that human consciousness experiences time. And then when clocks became a part of people's houses, like usually it was grandfather clocks,
big,
like 1800s, and also pocket watches. And that was also at the same time of industrialization and trains, and the trains run on time. Get it? So we went from like walking every place or riding horses or carriages, different level of conveyance to industrialized trains run on time. All of this is about beginning to schedule the human mind and beginning to take something that was feral and wild and uncontrolled and bringing it into a state of being boxed and regular and having an expectation. And then each one of us, you might remember in childhood, I invite you all to remember like what it was like when you were first here as a little child with a mind that was not very socialized or culturalized. And Terrence McKenna also used to say, culture is not your friend, which I think is a good catchphrase there. That, you know, you came here as like your own beautiful person and then had all of these cultural imprints placed upon you. I invite you all to remember back, like, what was it like when you were like 3 or 4, or, you know, before you really knew how to read a clock or even understand digital numbers, when like you just went through the day and like had like, I'm playing with my tea set, or I'm, you know, running around outside or jumping in a mud puddle, that very pure state of consciousness. And then eventually learning like, oh, like Sesame Street is on at this time, look at the clock and you will know when your favorite Sesame Street is on. Or a lot of it is going to school. And then you say, you have to go to school at this time. You have to learn to be a big girl or a big boy, go here at this time, do this. And that's all training and socialization. Not to be so down on socialization, because it's important to be able to do this to navigate in the world. But I want to bring it up as a way of saying, we have taken away from some of the breath of time, some of that, like, you know, your breath, your breathing is usually like sometimes fast, sometimes slow. If you're a musician and you play without a metronome, like sometimes you play fast and sometimes you kind of slow. And even music in our world changed a lot before the digital world and the digital presence, you know, in live music. If you listen to recorded live music from whatever, like the 1960s or the 1970s, sometimes the beats are faster, sometimes the beats are slower, because it's all based upon the drummer, an actual organic timekeeper that is not perfectly regulated. And now there's all sorts of computer programs, like in the production programs I use, it's called quantizing, where if a beat, you have a drum beat or whatever, and if it is not exactly on the time, you just press a button called quantize and it shifts all of those notes to be perfect cookie cutter notes. So that's like that. But I mean, I don't like to do that because I think it takes some of the richness.
Yes.
The humanity.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Connection out of it. So those irregularities are part of what gives us the connection to time as a living thing. Time sometimes flows slowly, it sometimes flows quickly, and it flows according to our connection of consciousness to it. That it's not just something that is regulated, even though in the modern industrialized society, we are asked to participate in time as if it is merely a regulated thing. And even the idea of regulating body processes, like not to get too much into it, but, you know, regulating, now it is time for a bathroom break. Now it is time for your lunch break. And it's all very Pavlovian, like ding, we learned this in school.
Yes.
Ding, bell rings, now it is time for you to salivate, you know, ding, the bell rings, now you are allowed to go and relieve yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
All training. And it's training to take the humanness from the humanity and make humans integrate more with an industrialized or machine-based culture, which was, again, part of the trajectory of human development. Just like you went from being a 3 or 4-year-old that was non-literate into understanding literacy, but then the idea is to transcend all of these things. That what we're moving into now in terms of planetary and personal consciousness is a transcendence of these industrialized machine artificial socializations that have been placed on us, and a return to, or a supernatural higher experience of saying, yes, I put on, it's like saying, I started out without these clothes on, I put on all of these social clothes, now I either take off or transcend these social clothes and return back to that mind state that is a pure mind state of just being connected to cosmic consciousness, which it's a timelessness. People who do meditation practices go into these levels of like an inner connection to higher consciousness or hyperspace or otherworldly travel. And that, I like to say, that is how experts do star travel, that it does not usually involve you know, a metal spaceship, that it involves levels of consciousness, virtuosity, and what are the words? And now my words fail me. Trying to go into, we could call it altered states of consciousness. It's not necessarily something that happens under psychedelic states. And I'm not actually a huge proponent of taking molecules for psychedelic adventures. Like, I just want to make that very clear. But that most people associate these inner states with taking an artificial or a potion from outside of themselves. But I want you to know that those otherworldly mind states can exist internally through your endogenous brain chemicals, just as a part of your natural neurological structure, your natural connection to time and nature and the stars and being present, that it's not necessarily something that you have to drink or eat something special in order to go into these levels of reality. And that learning to do that and the self-cultivation practices, those are like the precursor or the training to be able to then journey, on a journey of consciousness in the cosmos, throughout the stars. I don't mean to sound condescending when I say real star travelers don't use them.
No,
but
come on, you're the only real star traveler here.
You honor me with that. You're very beautiful. There are a variety, in terms of exopolitics, there's a variety of all sorts of different organisms. So again, I don't mean to be disrespectful to any organisms that might be flying in a clank metal spaceship that might desire or require that. And who knows, maybe one day we'll be like, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and we'll be like, hop on board or something like that. I'm just being lighthearted. But you know what I'm talking about. You never say never, because you might need a ride. Yeah. So if you need a ride, see who's out there.
That's wonderful. So just to backtrack really quickly, did you name yourself Aurora based on the connections that you mentioned before with the meaning of, was it what was the word? It wasn't Aurora, was it? Or did it have a different name?
The aurora, it exists as a phenomenon, like an astronomical phenomenon,
okay,
a light phenomenon on various different planets. Like there are aurorae on Earth. I think that there
Aurora. Okay.
I think there are some on Uranus, the most comically named planet in the solar system. And I want to say one of the gas giants. I'm not sure if it's Neptune or if it's Jupiter, but they're on several of the planets.
Okay, perfect. And you mentioned that stars are living things. Have you ever, as a walk-in, have you ever taken on that form as a star?
That's such a beautiful question. I will answer you by saying that is my aspiration. So here is the general trajectory of my life, that I, as this waveform that is Aurora, was in existence in a time that would be considered ancient Atlantis here, but is actually concurrent Atlantis. And it's a time before, known as a mythological time, before quote unquote the fall. But the fall was not just a fall of like a catastrophe on the planet that might have happened tens of thousands of years ago. It was a transformation in the human genetic code, that humans in another time place, which is actually concurrent to this time place. And you're there too. I want you to know this. You're there too, and probably everyone that you know is there too. And you might sometimes see their ancient or concurrent face kind of coming through. And sometimes people even have a connection with that persona. So I have very clear memories of that place, what its culture was like. Everybody was a light eater. This is big. So I'm a huge proponent of being a sun gazer. And when I do sun gazing, I don't use my physical eyes, and I don't want to encourage anyone else to burn out your retinas. Don't burn out your retinas by staring directly at the sun.
Okay. Yeah. Could you share with us? I mean, I know you're not, there's no liability, you're not a doctor, you're not blah, blah, blah. But just based on your experience, how do you, for me, how would you recommend someone, if they wanted to try stargazing? I mean, I have heard, it's so weird. I was thinking about this the other day, so it's funny that you bring it up. I have heard that there are benefits to it. So, I mean, what are the benefits, and what is a safe way to do so people aren't, like you say, just staring straight up at the sun and doing some damage?
Don't stare straight up at the noonday sun. That's like that. When you're in this level of reality, you're like a little baby. And don't be upset if I say being a baby. Being a baby can be beautiful and wonderful. Babies need like soft food. You need like some little like pureed carrots or something like that, not a big giant steak. So the noonday sun is very, very strong and bright, and not something that anybody should be sun gazing at. But early in the day and late in the day are good times.
Right. Okay.
It's through more atmosphere. And also when I have done it, I also do it either filtered through trees or through a lacy curtain or through the brim of a hat. And I'll also filter it through my lashes or close my eyes completely, because all of this is about aligning your third eye, pineal gland, with that sun. So it's not just the gland that's in your physical brain, but also the energy center that is emanated from that gland, that is an aperture. Just like your eyes are aperture, so you have little tiny holes in your eyes that let light in, and the light goes in and stimulates your brain, and that's physical light in that sense. This is a different level of light ingestion. So it does not necessarily have to be physical light through your eyeballs. You can sun gaze at a certain point, even if it's a cloudy day, even if the sun is, if it's nighttime and the sun is not in line of sight, direct line of sight there, at a certain point, you can reach, like stretching your mind to be able to reach the sun and get that. But when you first start out as a novice, it's best to do it with when the sun is actually present on a sunny day. I either close my eyes or wear a brim hat or something like that to protect my physicality, and also protect your skin so that you don't get burned on your skin. And then it involves several things. It involves a focus on the forehead, but not just like the surface of your forehead, really a deep inner structure, placing the tongue on the roof of your mouth so that you make a complete circuit. And it also involves this chakra or energy center here. It also involves this chakra and energy center here, all of which are balanced. I should bring up some imagery in order to show you this. Hold on one sec. Well, I don't want to wait. First, let me do this sun gazing, then I'll get a piece of imagery to show this to you.
Yeah, sure.
It's what my work is all about. The breathing in is another big part of it. So when you breathe in, that air energy, it goes not only into the sinuses that are under your eyes, but also kind of like up here, like kind of up above your eyebrows. And the breathing in is like a drinking. Like if you know, when you're a baby, you need to learn how to drink. You need to be taught, like, this is how you suckle. This is how you drink. This is how you swallow. This is what this lesson is all about. You align with the sun, and you can even imagine that there's an aspect of your brain mind that is like a tendril that reaches out, like an elephant's trunk or a long straw that you can sip with, or something that is a sensor that you can sense with. It's actually a part of your sensory organ that not many people know that they have it, but some people have it. Everybody is supposed to have it in this time place. But since the genetic degradation or augmentation or change that happened, that was the fall from Atlantis, then everybody does not necessarily have that or have it active. When it is active, you can use that to reach out to anything. That if you want, like, let's say I want to learn about a flower, instead of going to the library and getting a book and reading about what flowers are, I can use my tendril of attention to actually touch on a flower, touch on it, and learn directly from it. Oh, I'm chemically analyzing it. I understand its entire lifespan. I understand how it works and what it does, and even quote unquote talk to it. Or you can do that in order to sense food. What is in this food? What is this thing? What you can do it to sense a person. Right. You can reach out. And this also should be done consensually, because it's kind of a little bit, I clutch my pearls over here. It's a little bit intimate, reaching out to someone, you know, kind of like if you're going to shake hands with someone, you should shake hands with someone, but you shouldn't like lick their face. So you should do this only consensually.
Okay.
Or be like, knock, knock, knock. Like, may I reach out with my tendril and touch you? Because I don't want to encourage poor, uncivilized behavior towards everyone. But you can definitely reach out to the sun and the stars, as they are like our parents of consciousness. That's where everything that you have in your body came from, the sun and the stars, literally. All of the food, all of the energy, the calcium in your bones, calcium and heavier elements like that didn't come from this sun. The elements were created, you know, in the death compression, death throes, and then expansion of other suns at other time, other stars at other time. Just know that you are made of stars. There's a beautiful song about that too. We are all made of stars. You're made of star stuff. Even if you are here on Earth and you don't necessarily define yourself as a star seed or anything like that, even if you are just 100% just like mundane human, all of your food is transformed solar energy. That the sun came, or solar energy came, was alchemically transformed from a light wave into a solid starch by the magic of a leaf on a plant or photosynthesis on a plant. And then you either ate the leaf, or some animal ate the leaf and you ate the animal. It's all sun that's inside of you. It's all light that's inside of you. So the answer to sun gazing, like, why do it? What is this all about? Why even practice this crazy, not crazy, but this unusual, this untoward, this thing? It's because it's food. And right now we get our food indirectly, and it requires the death of another organism. But way back in Atlantis, or currently in Atlantis, we lived in a culture where it was not necessarily for another organism to die for us to be sustained. And you can understand there was a completely different structure of karma or personal responsibility in terms of ingesting organisms and maintaining yourself back then. So back then you received energy just from your feet walking along the earth, that energy literally flows up the legs and into the energy centers that are here, and also energy coming from the sun and the stars in through the higher chakras here, all of it meeting in the middle and kind of generating a generative field of buoyancy. And that is how everybody lived. So sun gazing, and P.S., when I first came here as Aurora into this body, for the first couple of weeks, that's what I tried to do. I'm like, I'm just sun gazing, I'm just earth energying. And I didn't understand, like, why does my body feel this way? Like, why is my body getting smaller? Like, why do I feel so weak? Like, I did not comprehend what it took to sustain this form of body in this time and place. What an education it has been, what a steep learning curve, what a trajectory it has been, because I didn't understand anything about food and eating. And then at first I just ate random foods placed together. I didn't know anything about food combinations or what is the right thing or the right way to treat a body and how you should do it and what foods at what time of day. I didn't know anything, ate randomly. And yeah, it's taken a long time for me to kind of understand, but then now I'm very good with food and nutrition, and I've definitely honed what, the way that I do it. So I am like a hybrid being, just like a hybrid car. You have electric plus gas. It runs on both of those things. So my body runs on, my light body runs on the solar energy that I ingest into me. And my physicality structure runs on the indirect solar energy that is present in my food forms. And I encourage everyone to practice mindful eating, that whatever food you're eating, if you're vegetarian, vegan, keto, paleo, meat eater, whatever it is, I'm not so choosy on that, but just when you look at it, think in your thought structure, I am literally eating some solidified light. I'm literally eating, like if you eat an orange, it's the end result of a year-long conversation that a tree had with the sun, that a tree talked to the sun, ingested ideas and energy from the sun and the stellar network for a year, ended up creating this amazing profusion that's called an orange. And then when you take that into you, you're not just ingesting like vitamins and carbohydrates, like that's what the objective materialist would see. There's a whole nother layer of reality there where you are ingesting the story of what happened over a year, not only in terms of weather phenomenons, but also everything that happened over a year and information from the sun that's talking to you. So the best thing when you're eating your food, try to eat things knowing that they're solidified light, and also try to find foods that are in their whole form. Like here's a whole giant orange. It contains more light than if you get like the juice has been all squashed out. You get it because it's the structure. So that's why I'm so big on structured water. Light and information is held in the structure of the actual water. So fruits and if you're going to juice something, juice it and then drink it right away. Like it's very different. Like, once you start cutting something, it not only oxidizes, it starts to lose that perfect structure. So try to find food items that are in their original structure. And that, that goes for everything. Like, and then of course, you have to prepare food so that they can go inside of your body effectively. But so I don't mean that you have to take, like, you don't have to crunch up a coconut, like with your teeth. You don't have to do that, but just understand, like, to find things that maintain their, as much as possible, the way that they grow or the way that they are formed, because that contains the most level of intelligence. What you want to do to feed your body in order to reach higher levels of consciousness or be more energetic or move more towards whatever you would say ascension or spiritual development is eat more light. Light is literally, it's literally intelligence. It literally gives you more energy to move your metabolic body at a faster level. And everything about our planetary experience, like I mentioned, pandemic and what happened in 2020, that moves concurrently with a ton of new energy coming to our planet that is meant to accelerate you. We are accelerating. Like imagine, remember those old film reels that are going, they're supposed to go at this speed, but all of a sudden we're going to go turn that crank. And everything is starting to move in fast motion. But everything is starting to move in fast motion. So you, all of the other organisms around you, microbes, insects, planet or realm itself, and stars, everything is starting to speed up. So it's really essential, like to keep up, you keep up with that larger momentum that's going. And then also you begin to add to that larger momentum. So that's big on like what is happening. People are afraid of pole shift and they're afraid of Earth falling apart, or the mountains are sliding into the ocean, or all these different things. And that is an understanding. That's an ancient trauma or ongoing trauma from the realm of Atlantis, where those things did or are actually occurring. But you don't have to always expect that your ancient traumas from childhood or this life, or if you had something bad happen to you, or ancestral traumas, like whatever, genocides or starvations, those things don't have to always be echoed. You don't have to set up a negative expectation. This bad thing happened, it's in my DNA structure, and it's just going to keep echoing, like the thing that you don't really want, but that keeps going on and on and on. That it's time now for us to not short circuit, but like I talked to you about those time wave zero, you collapse time waves when you have equal, like one that's down like this and one that's up like this, it collapses to neutral. And that's really the idea of presenting the rectification waves for all of these negative internalized time patterns and DNA patterns, because time and DNA are hand in hand. Your DNA is like a giant blockchain. You know, I'm happy that blockchain exists because it gives me a really good analogy. Blockchain, like the cryptocurrency stuff. It's a very, very, very long string of numerals that keeps on getting longer, that holds a lot of information about every single transaction that's ever happened in that particular form of currency. And your DNA is very similar. It's a blockchain holding information of all of these things that have happened over multiple generations that go deep into antiquity, and then also connect further into the future, and also branch outward in beautiful complexities. So all of these things, the light that you're ingesting, the DNA complexity structure, and your consciousness, these are, and your travel through time, these things are all related. So what used to happen in Atlantis was you embodied as a being, that's an individuated being. You never lost your connection to the sun and the stars or the divine or the source through this whole experience of embodiment. Walked along on the earth, getting earth energy and stellar energy. At a certain point, coalescing or accreting enough light energy to no longer have to be physically like a battery with terminals touching the earth, but being able to actually hover. And I don't just mean like hover a couple of feet, but like to be able to actually live in the sky as a giant floating society. So there were different levels of society: ground-based, then when you ascend or graduate from that ground-based society, you live in the floating level of society. And the floating level of society follows the sun, because it needs to be constantly energized by the sun. So it's constantly revolving and following the sun. And then there's a lot of beings up there. It's a coalescence, it's a collective, or like a symphony or something like that. And those beings living at that level, when there's enough accretion of energy and momentum and metabolism happening there, then can fully disengage from not only the earth, but also from this particular star, and travel the entire star system. Travel not only this, be focused not only on this, the nearest present star, but to travel on that entire network of stars. That's where I come from. I come from that level of being, a traveling accretion of light, energy, consciousness, graduate students from physical embodiment who are outside of time, space, and dimensionality, and literally are bouncing like a signal between these neurons in a great brain. So I'm one of these coalesces of consciousness, and I'm named Aurora, or the Aurora Collective, or however you would like to say that. That's the name of my collective. Because when I first came here, people would be like, "You're from outer space? Like, what is your star? Like ET phone home, like point to the sky,
right?
Show me like ET up there." But I had to tell them like, no, it's not like that. I don't come from one place, because we've bounced all over, and we do missions or have purpose. Don't just bounce for no reason, or like whatever, like as an arbitrary or whatever, a touristy kind of thing is what I'm
yeah.
But I toss
No, that makes
like,
sense. Okay.
I'm a tourist, I go wherever I want to. No, not really like that. Purposefully moving through the star system and the stellar network on really a mission of rectification. Really to be able to fix, heal, improve, augment, or bring energy to where it needs to be, but also at the same time creating beauty wherever we go. So it's a multi-layered existence. It's not all like hard work or drudgery. It's very, very different than being embodied here. It's an incredibly freedom-filled, joyful existence that is also filled with meaning and purpose. And I descended or came into this level of density from that level of freedom and expansion. And it's been a real challenge because here, like I have a great sense of responsibility of what I'm doing with my flying rainbow lasagna information, with my own DNA of my body, with sharing this idea with other people while I'm here. And also like this place down here, like it is a very hard gig. It is much harder to be here in this level of food eating, organism killing, karma accumulating type of body than it was in the time when I was familiar with, which would be ancient Atlantis. It's a different time here. It's a much harder existence. Like in the Bible, it talks about Adam and Eve being ejected from the Garden of Eden. And now you have to toil. Now you have to toil in the soil to be able to and now you're left to be pain, and now you're left to be pain and drudgery. And I'm being lighthearted about it. There is some truth to the mythologically flavored presentation given in the Bible. I'm not a biblical literalist or don't want to be off-putting to anyone who has a different faith. But yeah, that is a truism that now it is a big challenge, not only to eat food, to create food, to eat it, to digest it. Like when you come here as a little baby, I told you, you have to learn to suckle and you have to learn to swallow, but all of your belly and your digestive tract, all of that has to learn. Like you have to get probiotics in there. You have to learn how to digest. Babies get gassy and they cry and they don't know what to do and they don't know how to use their bodies. And of course we're adults and we know how to use our bodies at this point, but digestion is hard and it is a toil on the body. Like all these things are challenges. And when you are a pure light eater, the experience of being alive is much lighter, much more joyful and more exultant. Like imagine what your day would be like if you weren't on the hunt for food. So much of our time right now is spent like, got to get up and make breakfast, got to clean up after breakfast. Then we got to prepare for lunch. And then once you eat lunch, we got to finish up after lunch. Then we're going to have to use the bathroom several times. Then we're going to prepare for dinner. Then we're going to clean up the whole entire kitchen. Got to get to the supermarket, got to get to the farm, got to get to the farmer's market, got to, get some chicken. Like it's a constant need for that. And I don't decry it because we can make it something fun. It can be like, woohoo, like I'm going to eat something great. And I like to eat whatever is your favorite food, fill in the blank. And it is a constant like running on the wheel of need more resources. Imagine what your day would be like if you've ever done fasting. I don't do it myself, but some people do, where you simply are relieved of that responsibility for a little while and you can have a different level of experience where you wake up and you're like, well, I'm not on the hunt for food and I don't have to just go figure out what I'm going to eat for the next meal, and I don't have to worry about what's in my refrigerator and do I have to get to the store today, and I don't have to either be concerned about what's in my wallet and is there enough money in my wallet to be able to get to the store to be able to get the things that I need today. It's a different level of existence than, I wouldn't call it the animal existence, but your body can be like an animal, but it can be beautiful. But all of those concerns go by the wayside, and then you're able to focus on having a different level of experience. So I invite everyone to imagine, like, what would it be like if you could be a 100% light eater or 100% light breather, breathing in nothing but light and the life force energy into your pineal gland, and then have that circulate throughout your body, just like blood circulates through your body. So when you breathe in ordinarily, you breathe in to your lungs air, and then all of your beautiful red blood cells circulated everywhere, all down to your toes. When you have a functional light body, you connect with the sun and the stars and you breathe in. And so the practice of sun gazing is connecting with your tendril to the sun and doing these particular deep breathing exercises with your tongue placed on the roof of your mouth. Right. And it's a filling up the lower chakras first, like your lower belly down there where your guts are, filling that up with light. And then on the next breath, filling it up higher, feeling like a glass of water, like you're rising higher, filling up your heart, filling up your high heart, filling up all the way up to here. And at a certain point, like you will feel topped off and you have enough. And then you might even feel like a reconnection with the sun, kind of like you've made a giant battery circuit, like the energy came into you. And it's also really good to do it if your feet are on the ground, or if you're, sitting on the ground with your spine is near or touching the ground, through like, actually sitting on the actual earth or ground or grass. Then you make that beautiful circuit between the earth and the sky, and you make this circulatory system functional. So doing that as a daily practice is excellent for like rejuvenation, getting ideas, getting creative energy. I do it whenever possible. It's why I live in a sunny climate. It's literally why I moved to California from dreary upstate New York. I mean, upstate New York has beautiful sunny days in the summer, but then 5 or 6 months of very, very, cloudy, wintry, no sun days. And being a light eater, those months of the year were very difficult for me to get through. So you eat light much more than just through your skin. You eat light through your eyes, but everybody eats light through your pineal gland. So the pineal gland, so that you have your chakra, which is your higher dimensional field of light, that energy field that is around your body, but you also have a physical presence inside of the deep inner structures of your brain, kind of in between the two hemispheres, where there's all sorts of glands and regulatory systems that exist there in the center part of your brain. And it is a vestigial trace of reptiles. If you ever have had a pet lizard or whatever, they usually have like a really big scale on the top of their head that is light through. And it's because they're, cold-blooded, and it's important for them to know when the sun is out, when the sun is not out, and it's part of their metabolic regulatory system. Humans have this also. Don't be afraid or ashamed or resistant of having reptilian aspects or vestigial traces of the physical body, because the brain stem is also reptilian, and aspects of the digestive tract are also reptilian. But it's part of understanding like diurnal living, like sun is up, the sun is down, the sun is like natural rhythms. And that's what time is. It's about being in touch with these natural rhythms. And
I like that.
Your inner gland is part of sensing where you are in time and where you are connecting to the sun and the other stars. And interestingly enough, your pineal gland emits several hormones into the body, one of which is endogenous DMT, which is, a hallucinatory substance. And the other one is melanin, which is what is used for your skin to darken. So when you go in the sun, your skin eats light and it goes to your pineal gland. Your pineal gland says, I got to make some melanin to go onto the skin so that I don't get too much light inside of me. And also melatonin. And melatonin is all about regulating day-night sleep cycles. So, it kind of like they have supplements like if you need to go to sleep, take melatonin or whatever, but it's supposed to be a natural production in your pineal gland as a response to natural light. And it's supposed to regulate your daytime, waking, sleeping, diurnal cycles. And so all these things, light is a part of your body, even your physical structure. And then you also have a giant light body. Let's do a share screen. I'll pull up a good picture.
Sure.
Of what your light body is shaped. All right, so this is a drawing from a sketch that I did. You can clearly see the anthropomorphic human form, where I'm kind of wiggling my cursor in the middle of the screen. And then these are all time presences or light presences. That's the light body. And all of these are vortices or chakras. Chakra is a Sanskrit word. It's not a fancy word at all. It just means spinning wheel of energy. And it comes from a reference to charioteers from like an ancient time in the, world of the Far East in India, when people traveled on chariots, because you can see that the wheels are kind of set up like two wheels, like are on a chariot. And you have two like this, and you have two like this. They're vortex shapes. And where I'm wiggling my cursor in the middle, that's singularity. That's where these vortex shapes come together. And you can also see that there are special proportions. These are divine proportions, or divine, cosmic is another word for it, higher intelligence. It's not something that I'm merely made up or whipped up in some way. It's not random or arbitrary or defined by me, that these are mathematical presences, just like when the Fibonacci sequence, or when you drop a pebble onto a lake and you see those ripples emanating outward. There are mathematical presences expressed through the beautiful biological / physical format that are, it's an interdimensional language. So you're looking at the interplay here of physical structure plus this abstract interdimensional language. And the interdimensional language, I talk about this in my class, it's color, line, shape, form, movement, texture, and tone. And tone is like la la la, a tone of music. So all of these, like Roy G. Biv and all of these colors can also be expressed as, here, I should just turn on my piano and sing it for you. All of these colors can be expressed as, oh, I have everything unplugged because I had to plug in my light. I'm sorry. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, and back to red. So all going up the scale of the octave is the same as the light body. So some people are more auditorily trained, so they perceive all of this as music and tones. Some people are more visually oriented, they perceive it all as rainbow colors, or you might be math oriented, different nested, perfect fractal shapes. That's what this is. It's your light body, and your light body is comprised entirely of time, possibilities, probabilities. It's the raw materials of time. It is the potentials or non-expressed aspects of time. Like right now, of course, we're embedded in an ocean of time and we're swimming around from moment to moment, but this represents more of a map of time that is also, it's a moving presence. So you have to understand all of these wheels or chakras are moving. They're all moving and also twisting and circulating around your body. So when you do sun gazing, you're ingesting it through your forehead here, but you also understand it cascades down, it cascades down, it cascades down, it swirls around, it swirls around, it swirls around, energizes and surrounds your entire presence of your body. And your chakra system or light body, it actually extends not only, oops, hitting my light here, my light body, not only as far as like your arms stretch out, but it can grow. It can be as big as your house. It can be as big as your property. It can, you know, if you really have a big wingspan, it can be as big as your community or even larger. So please understand that your presence on that light level is not necessarily dependent upon the limitations of your physicality, and that the higher in frequency you go, like as you are going up the ladder and you're going to blue and violet in the rainbow and in your body, you're going into higher frequency, shorter wavelength, higher dimensional, less dense realms. So in your body, your physicality presence is red, orange is your emotional presence, yellow is your intellectual presence, green is the level of unconditional love, and then this turquoise is the level of communication. Then we're getting up to, I remember I mentioned the chakra, you have a pineal gland that is a physical structure. If we cut up in your head and sawed it open with a chainsaw and split open your skull, we would find inside of there this little, you know, tiny gland, but you would not necessarily find these presences and the energy field around you. It's like, that's the thing that happens when you're alive. So when you're alive, you have a light body that's sparkling out and doing all this wonderful, you know, twisting and whirling and swirling and everything like that. But when you die and you're just a corpse, you're just a corpse. There's nothing emitting. So it's not something that is visible after a person's death. And then there's an interplay between this chakra or energy center that's here and this one that is the crown here, that they kind of have a gyrostabilizing effect, kind of like a helicopter that has both the propellers that go around the top and the rotors on the back. That gyrostabilizing is like the complementary torsion fields that are created by these two different one spinning like this, one spinning like this, and that's a really important interplay in terms of stabilizing your flight through time. So, and I talk about all of this actually really extensively in my online classes that I taught for so long. So if anybody really wants to know more or really wants to delve, first of all, I invite you and encourage you, find my YouTube channel, and everything about me you can find by just searching for Flying Rainbow Lasagna. And I spell lasagna with an E on the end, but there's tons of stuff, lots of videos, and I have a huge catalog of many semesters stored up on my YouTube. And I have it there intentionally because I want this to be available to people to be able to watch. So I have a lot of live lectures. And then also that what runs concurrent with the live lectures are my series of online classes where I go into all of this and kind of do a more of a textbook it's not dry, it's not boring, but it's definitely like a more academic presentation of what the light body is and what this is all about, so that everybody can understand what happens when you transform into this shape, that those toroidal shapes are the precursor to this, which would be considered a hypertorus or a higher dimensional torus, or what happens when you take that singularity that is here, this central meeting point, and you begin to make it bounce up and down, or in and out, or side to side, that it creates these unusual waveforms. And these unusual waveforms, I'm going to switch. So I'm going to hop out of this picture. And I'm going to give you a new picture. This is a new picture. And this is just a simple sketch, but I think that it shows pretty well what I'm trying to portray. So the top part of these two circles is a cross section of a torus, and then the bottom two circles is the cross section of the same torus that is moved down, up and down, up and down. You take that torus and you're moving it up and down, and when it's up, it creates this waveform that is the first, like the top flange or the top petal shape of this lasagna shape. I'll hold it up so you can see it more. So you can see that echoes this shape right here.
Yeah.
And the torus moves down, then it echoes this shape down here. So this shape here is the end result of something jumping up and down. And this point here and this point here, that's the singularity. And the singularity is actually defined as one point. So that Terrence McKenna time wave zero algorithm that I was telling you about, it was talking about achieving that 0 point, or that singularity, or that crossing point moment. And singularity has been defined as many different things. And in objective materialism, it's also talked about as a moment of transhumanism, which is also what we're experiencing here on the planet. When I talk about singularity, I'm talking about an infinity point, or the 0th dimension. And the 0th dimension is like the crossing point of all timelines and possibilities and probabilities. And it's the house that everyone and everything resides within. It's like the before, quote unquote, the Big Bang, or before the big explosion. You know, even the Far East religions talk about like a profusion that happens, like the sound of Om, and the profusion that happens. It's the most dense everythingness in one little tiny package. Everythingness, that everythingness, when you actually, I'll go back to my face, when you actually start to understand or comprehend what that everythingness is, it can be here and it can be here, and it's jumping back and forth, but there's only one of them. And when you really comprehend that, you understand it's inside of you, and it can be inside of another thing or another person or place or time, that there is no distance between those times. That instead of being like, I'm here and the sun is over here, and then there's 93 million miles away between us, when you understand the singularity that's inside of me is the same singularity that's inside of the sun, that's a portal for consciousness, time and space and consciousness bend and come closer together. And all of a sudden there is no distance between you and the sun. So this becomes a very profound tool for bending and folding time, space, and consciousness, for immediate communication between self and beings of a vastly different scale, that also in part of traveling the stars and being a sophisticated star traveler, not only is it about consciousness cultivation to be able to do that just using your body package and your consciousness, but it's also the question of time scale. Like if we live 100 years, but a sun star can live whatever, 90 million years. I'm making that up. Some suns,
but something significant.
So long that like let's say science says our world is roughly 13 billion years old, and we've got about 13 or 16 billion years left before there would be just like kaput. All right.
Okay.
Some stars have such a long lifespan that they were born like billions of years ago, and that they are still alive now. They haven't ever died, is what I'm trying to say. Like if our entire reality bubble is roughly 13 billion years old, none of them have died yet. They all are still just chugging along, going. Think about something that is 13 billion years old and it's only middle-aged, and trying to communicate with that when we are like, that is how fast our lifespan is. So by the time we send out a little thought signal like, hey, howdy, I want to talk with you, like boom, my life is over. The star has already, if it was necessary for it to travel all the way across galactic space, like here's my little message going out to the sun, going out to the stars. And by the time the sun hears it and answers back, like you're dead. you're long dead. You've been dead for 1,000,000 years already, because there's this vast difference in time scale and in perception. Or like if you, Jordan, wanted to have a conversation with a fruit fly, and like, I don't know if you've ever had this, but like you put banana peels or mango peelings or something in the trash overnight, and the next morning you open it up and it's like all of these fruit flies jump out. Like they have had a whole civilization in your garbage can over the 8 hours that you've been sleeping at night, because they only live for 3 days. So imagine that. That's like 25 or 30 years for them living and evolving inside of your garbage can just at night. And then they all bust out. Oh my, and then it's like, oh, now you're like swatting them with a fly swatter or whatever, trying to get them out of the house. It's like the catastrophe has happened. Like we have exited from our civilized world of the trash can, and now the giant bearded monster is swatting at us with newspapers, and it's a catastrophe for them. And then of course there's the next generation they get smart too, because they'll transfer that information to the next morning when they hop out. They'll be like, oh, we will avoid the monstrous swatter. We will know to run to the light, get out the door. Like I'm joking and being lighthearted, but it's that same level of difficulty of communicating effectively, because your time scale of your life is so different than that of a fruit fly that only lives for 3 years. So the bending and folding of time space makes that communication instantaneous. So that's really the only way to have a real-time, meaningful communication between a being that is on the scale of a star or greater. Because I have said the star is like one neuron in a great brain, and the entire brain is part of a much, much larger consciousness. That PS, spoiler alert, is actually you. And it's you when you get to that next level of development. So when you asked me about being a star and everything like that, I said, that is my aspiration, because the next level of development, after you walk on the earth, then eat the stars, then you hover and you eat the stars, but you don't have to be attached to the earth, but you have to constantly follow the sun. Then at a certain point, you don't have to be attached to the sun. You're able to bounce like a neurological signal, which is what I was doing through all of these different neurological adventures on the stellar network. At a certain point, then you become a star. But that's your whole collective, all of those flavors of, or facets of self, become the way that a star is created, like a accretion of dust and gas and particles and possibilities and probabilities and personality characters coming together and making the necessary, if there's enough stuff to be, and the stuff is life experiences, the stuff is accrued emotional energy, the stuff is wisdom and consciousness and all of the experiences that make up a being, all comes together and then starts to create this amazing luminosity and becomes a emitter itself. So basically the journey of consciousness is to go from being a ingester to being an emitter, but it's a very, very, very long journey. So I am here as part of my journey, ingesting a lot of emotional experiences that I've been here for 20 years and I've been on a mission. And also I'm a distillation of all of the collective that I'm connected to, that entire Aurora star network collective. Like I'm a distillation. They're all here with me. It's all me. It's not like, oh, like I chopped off the thumb, but the rest of the fingers are up there floating around. Be like, right. I'm like, they all came with me. They're all here with me. It's all ever present with me. And I'm non-locally connected to all of them at all times. So self knows what self is doing at all times. And I'm here on a very particular mission. And like I said, I thought, or mission or purpose. And I thought that my purpose would be very fast. Like I thought it would be like done in a couple of years, because I thought all that I needed to do was understand what I had internalized as this abstract shape and externalize it. I thought all I needed to do, because at first, like you have an idea, but if you haven't written it down or made it into something, like how do you share it with others? So I had to kind of do a lot of drawings and a lot of sketches and a lot of folded paper origami shapes. And at a certain point in 2003, so it was like maybe 18 months or so, I had the shape and I did it and I made it. And then it was a question of, I thought, well, like that was like, that's everything. Like I did it. I took something that was an internal abstraction. I externalized it. I went to a small town near where I lived. I said, hey, everybody, like, here it is. And people were like, there it is. And then I was like, that's it. Mission accomplished. You know, like whatever, hitch up your pants and hitch your suspenders, like yeehaw, like mission accomplished, we're all done. But clearly not all done, because I did not transcend from this level of reality. And I kind of was like, well, okay, like maybe my job isn't done yet. Like that's what my whole trajectory of being Aurora has been like here, that I thought like, fast, get you just in and out. We're going to just do this. Yeah. And then no, not quite done yet. Like the goalposts kept on moving. And I thought in 2012, it was like, oh, now we're really going to be like, now we are done. Like we did.
Right.
Yep. Goalposts moved again. And so then because every time it's like, I want to share this thing in a positive way that has an impact on the people of this time, place. So just standing on a street corner, just being like, here, like, may I offer you this flying rainbow lasagna sculpture? Like people were like, that's weird, or what is that, or who are you, right. Why are you standing there, what is this all about? Like I learned so much about people from trying to connect with them in that way. So then I learned, okay, I got to do it in a different way. And so in 2012 I decided, well, I decided to do artwork before that. Like I will make paintings and sculptures, and that is considered like a way of communicating this type of abstraction in this time and place. Eventually, I went to math art conferences too, because that's another way that I connected with the academic community or the community of intellectuals to try to plant the seeds of lasagna in their minds.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Thank you. And I was very reticent to do so, but I had a beautiful friend at the time, because I felt that I was not, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a mathematician. She was like, no, you need to go. And she even like helped me, in facilitating my plane ticket and everything. And I ended up finding out it was a wonderful experience, because I, at that time, didn't know very much about technology or computers. And that was when, first of all, like they didn't have, children gathered around, and I will sound like an old person. This was before the invention of pressure sensitive touch screen tablets and everything like that. And I didn't know about 3D printing either. And I have these little tiny lasagna earrings, but these were the first ones that I ever had 3D printed.
That's so cool. That's cute.
And then this is another, I have bigger ones and I have smaller ones, but I didn't know anything about computers or 3D printing. And I went to these math art conferences and I met computer scientists, and I learned all about computers.
That's so cool. That's how you learn. That's wonderful.
My world. And then it made me very interested in computers and interested in a way to facilitate using that technology to make artwork and animations and consciousness, communications and things like that. So then what I ended up getting was, it's called a modified MacBook. This is like the old iPad before iPads were invented.
Okay.
I got a MacBook and took off, you send it to a mod company that will modify it for you, take off the keyboard, so you just have the screen, and then put like a pressure sensitive screen, like, with an artist stylus to be able to draw on the top. So I got one of those, and that was just a huge level up for me, that I, instead of just drawing with a pencil on a piece of paper, I could draw with a stylus on a computer. And I started to draw all of these different shapes to animate and different things like that. I sent you the link to the original animation, but I'll show you, these are some more recent ones that I did. And I didn't actually do oh, there we go. We got it. Your own particular time presence bouncing through these layers of time. And if this looks like DNA and chromosomes, that's intentional.
Yeah, that's amazing. This is so cool.
And again, this was a more rudimentary one that I did just with some Photoshop as an animator.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this is amazing. I know that you said that you don't promote the taking of drugs or anything like that, but have you ever had your fans or followers reach out to you and say, hey, I took some acid or I took some mushrooms or whatever, and I watched your video and listened to your music and it was wonderful?
I get wonderful confirmations from ingesters of psychedelics. I can't do it myself because I have had epilepsy, so it's too much for my brain. But people say, this is what I saw when I was in those mental states. And that's a wonderful confirmation. And this is starting to show you how the actual lasagna form is shaped from this bouncing back and forth. And, I have nothing against the ingestion of psychedelics or augmentation in that way, but I'll tell you that it's like the beginning way of doing it, like the training wheels. And then at a certain point, you don't need your training wheels to ride your bicycle anymore, and they actually slow you down. So then it's time to release them and no longer have to have that experience. You can do everything you need to do naturally when you get to a certain point. Just through sun gazing, mindful eating of your food. And that's an actual lasagna sculpture that I made that I brought to the math art conference here. And you know what I'm going to do also while we're sharing
so
fun
cool.
videos? You know something, if people want to find that animation, if they can go to my YouTube channel, which is Flying Rainbow Lasagna, and it's the primary one on the homepage. So it's really, really easy to find.
I enjoyed that.
Yeah, thank you so much. Here, I'll show, I have a couple of other ones. These are made, I did these with the facilitation of animator who has better software than me. Let me bring this
okay.
screen. And these ones do not have fancy soundtracks, but I should probably make something for it now that I'm a musician myself. This shows this.
The music for that last video was great.
Again, Leland Guerriere, lovely person that I knew from back east. Try to move. I'm sorry, I've got the prompting over here. So you can see there's this jumping back and forth motion that is what actually stretches the fabric of time, space, and consciousness, creating this as the end result of the waveform. And I have another one to share too. So, and also this gives a good sense of it's a jumping back and forth even while this is rotating. And the lasagna has different motions. It has a rotating motion, but it also has a spinning end over end motion. And so I'll show you the next video that shows that one pretty well, shows that movement, the spinning end over end, like a tumbling. And these are basically 4 different movements, just like in a musical chord. You can have 4 different notes, but within those 4 different notes, you can create so many chords. And so it's a whole language that you can create, or DNA, 4 different protein structures, A, C, T, G, and then all the different life forms that can create it out of that. So you've got the up, down jumping, the back and forth jumping, and still rotating movement. There's an in and out, which you can imagine kind of like from your heart, like moving in and out into you and into the world. And then there's a tumbling end over end. So you get a sense of these are dynamic structures. And even these that I'm showing to you are simplifications, that these can become incredibly complex structures. Just like I said, that's the tumbling end over end, tumbling, tumbling, tumbling. If you have 4 notes, whatever, in a chord, but you can play so many different songs, 4 protein structures in your DNA, but you can create so many different life forms and unique forms of organism from that. Same thing with these basic dance movements. And here, that's the end of that. They're just short little animations. So there's movement in your DNA. This is big because DNA is often portrayed to people, like in science class, it's like an X-shaped or a Y-shaped chromosome, or something that is like a line, like a piece of yarn that looks kind of twisted together. And DNA has behavior. So even the objective materialist science of this time and place, the way everyone studies DNA is like taking the genetic sweater of who and what you are, unfurling all the yarn, pulling out all the loops, then chopping it up into pieces, putting it into a centrifuge and finding out like, we've got this much red, we've got this much yellow, we've got this much green or whatever. And without ever looking at the totality of what the sweater looked like when it was knitted together, that it might've been like, oh, like a Christmas tree with Snoopy. Like it's a Christmas sweater, you know?
Right.
Without even seeing the big picture of what that was. So all of these loops in DNA, like they fit together, they interlock, they have an intelligence to them, and they also have a behavior. And the behavior is called methylation, which has to do with if your DNA is like a scroll, like kind of like scrolling up and unscrolling too. And that has to do with what it just in a scroll, what part of it is visible or readable to the RNA readers. So if you have something scrolled up tight, no one can read what's inside of there. It's a secret, or it's locked, or it is inaccessible. And if it is unfurled, then it is something that can be read, accessed, and manifested into not only your physical form, but into reality, because DNA also contains time structures in there. So DNA behavior is a big part of the manifesting of potential. If something is curled up inside of you, it's like it exists as a potential. It could be a disease or a negative life experience or something that you don't want to have. It's okay. It's in there, but only as an unmanifested potential, kind of buried inside, as opposed to unfurled and fully active. And DNA behavior, which is what science has yet to be able to recognize, because it needs a different type of like X-ray vision. to be able to, like the invention of the microscope allowed for humans to understand, like, wait, there are tiny microorganisms that are actually creating disease or, affecting aspects of human health. Right now, they don't have the goggles to be able to look at what human DNA has as its behavior while it is alive in the cell, only dead in petri dishes or centrifuges. So DNA has all of these different movements, everything from creating plasmids or wreaths to unsplicing itself, splicing itself back together. Like there are enzymes that cut it, because when you have something that's really, really, really curled up tight and you want to uncurl it, I don't know if you've ever had this problem with like an old-fashioned phone cord. Again, we're hearkening back to ancient technology. Like, what? You used to have to be attached to a wire to the wall and listen to people on the phone that way. Yes. And if you missed your call, that was it. You missed your call. That was it. Life was over. No way to get the messages either. But those curly phone cords and whatever, if they get really, really, really curled up, then sometimes the only way to uncurl them, like you have to cut it. You have to cut a splice, and then it relieves all of that tension so that it can be. So DNA is the same thing. If all of these things are very, very tightly curled up, in order for RNA messengers to actually read it, it's necessary to cut a splice. And then, I've relieved that tension. All of that kinetic energy now can unfurl. And now we can actually read those pages of the book of you or pages of the scroll of you. And so there's a constant curling up, uncurling, twisting, somersaulting, weaving, reweaving action in your DNA, just being you. Like you, Jordan, just sitting in your chair right there. Your DNA is super active. It's doing all these different things. It's twisting, curling, moving inside of itself. Like that is normal DNA behavior. And that only stops when you are dead. And even after you have metabolic death, that DNA behavior can still exist for a day or two after. You still have cellular activity even after your consciousness presence is no longer in your body. So all of that activity, it slows down and kind of mushes. But that activity is ordinarily what propels you through time. In part one of our discussion, we were talking about a film strip and those little squares that are the individual moments of time. And what propels you from this moment to this moment to this moment to this moment to this moment is the action of your DNA. Doing stuff, chugging along, twisting, bending, twirling itself, doing somersaults, doing all these interweavings. Yeah, I call it going through the time, like the train cars of reality, like because it's from an old Twilight Zone episode about these people. And they were like, it stuck out of a moment in time, and they were watching time being built. So yeah, it's this whole idea of, that there are individuated moments and you're jumping from moment to moment. And, we don't necessarily, like now it's 9:05, but we don't have to stand here and be like, okay, like get ready, jump. Now it's 9:06. Like our DNA is what gives us that fluidity and that motion of moving from moment to moment through time. So understanding and mastering that concept is a big part of integrating with the time field, that you actually have, those chakras that I showed, spinning wheels of energy in the first segment. You have these timelines that are kind of like sine waves that are coming towards you. And when you are in alignment with those waves, you are synced up and you get all these wonderful synchronicities. You're moving without friction. It's something that generates energy within you as opposed to erodes your energy. So, if you're swimming in the ocean and you're at cross purposes to the current, like there's waves that are crashing and you're trying to go against the current or in a perpendicular way, it can be really difficult. You're like, oh, this swimming is really hard and it's crashing you down, and you crash down on the coral reefs and you're all scratched up from being bottomed on the bottom of the ocean there. But if you go with the ocean currents, then you're like, oh, now I'm flowing with the ocean. And this big giant swell is actually giving me more power and more power and more power. So a big part of this DNA dance is aligning with the naturally occurring time currents that bring you in certain directions, and then mastering how you can make your own, swimmer's strokes to complement those, how you can do your timing. It's also like double Dutch jump rope. This, what I'm talking about when you have two jump ropes. This is also kind of old. I have a lot of old references. When you have two,
I love it.
two of these, because no one does this anymore because everyone's on their computer iPad. But yeah, it used to be what people did for fun. And it was a very urban thing too, that you've got two participants here and here, and they've got two jump ropes stretched between them. And you kind of are swirling the jump ropes like this. And then a third person jumps into the middle. But because you've got these two lateral waves that are moving, you have to move your feet really fast and kind of do like a little hopping jump and a hopping dance. The lateral waves that are moving, those are like time currents that are already in existence, or like DNA swirling, twisting structures that are already in existence. And then for you to begin doing your own unique flying rainbow lasagna dance, it's a question of integrating. And what is the word? You have to synchronize your movements. You have to complement and work within the larger time structures that are already flowing. Because in the jump rope, if you don't do it right, your feet get all tangled up and then you kind of fall over. But that is very similar, like integrating your own individual DNA movements as an individuated structure with the larger cosmic currents of structure, and that's this beautiful partnership and interplay. And just like being a musician in a symphony, like your unique contribution adds to the whole, and you also have the music of the whole flowing over you and crashing over you in a crescendo. So much of this DNA, genetic behavior, flying rainbow lasagna understanding, emissions of your, also a lot of your thoughts affect your DNA reality. I haven't even gotten into that. So what affects genetic behavior? Thinking. And DNA behavior then also affects your thoughts and your perception. So this is also very big in terms of whatever genetic modifications might be going on this in this world right now, in terms of food that is ingested, organisms, or the genetic modification of humans through various different programs. Change a person's DNA behavior and their genetic behavior, you change a person's thought and perception, and vice versa. If you want to have your DNA behave in a different way, ingest different thoughts, think different thoughts, and the music of your mind begins to make your little tendrils in your cellular body dance in different ways. And so this is, again, something where you like with anything, like being a surgeon or whatever, you should become a virtuoso. You should go to school and know what you're doing before you do DNA surgery or anything like that. Become a responsible citizen. But and also you have sovereignty of your own body. And I'm very big on this concept, the idea of pure freedom. You know, where I come from, like Aurora Collective, and where the levels of consciousness that I'm at up there, it's all about cosmic law. And part of cosmic law is, you know, this sense of pure freedom, but it doesn't mean the freedom to murder or, you know, harm others or take whatever you want. But it is the understanding of being an organism within a context where you have an individuated form or collective form, and you are free to be yourself and to be motivated according to your motivations, but also you have a respect for the context and the other organisms, that everything has consequences. You also take the consequences of what you do, radical self-responsibility, radical accountability in a state of total freedom. And it's different, you know, coming here, that there are delays in terms of the adjudication of cosmic law in this world at this time. So you might send out really positive stuff, but maybe it doesn't come back until 10 years later, or you send out positive stuff and, you know, you receive negative stuff back. Like there's a lot of things here about that level of perfect, pristine organization in a pristine system, that here there are delays or distortions or loss of signal that can make it feel like, well, but wait, like that doesn't happen down here. It's supposed to happen down here. And it did in that concurrent world of Atlantis, which was like the beautiful, pristine, perfect world. All of that, we are returning to levels of cosmic law. And cosmic law is kind of like, not that the world is a computer system, but just think of it as a functional computer system as opposed to one that is dysfunctional. Like if you have a functional computer system, the signals and the information that you send out are responded to, and then it's a pristine system that then reflects back to you of what you are. So really, if you send out something that is anger, negativity, harm towards others, that would then be, of course, reflected back to you. You would learn from it. You would change and modify your behavior and your thought structure and send it out. We're still cleaning up the junk that's at this level. There's a lot of crapola or distortions or bugs on the windshield or whatever we would call it from the experiences that we've all gone through. as a collective and as people and as individual moving through time. So we're moving back to this level of a pristine society. And in doing so, then you get to feel what it really is like being in a finely tuned orchestra. And everybody's violin is perfectly in tune, and everybody is a genetic virtuoso. And you also have to take radical responsibility. Like if I send out this thought form and it affects this way and this way and this way, and then I have to accept that that bounces back to me, and it makes you have to be very like mature. There's no like excuses or anything like that. It's like, I created that with my mind. I sent that out with my mind. I made that happen. And then I have to be accountable and take responsibility for what I made happen, and then deal with the consequences. And then very big on fixing mistakes, admitting to mistakes, fixing mistakes, that is also part of it. And this is part of leveling up in consciousness in a cosmic, not hierarchy, but system of development. So know on a deep level that all the experiences that you're having here in a distortion realm, where it's a dystopia, where you might not get an immediate reflection of everything you send out, but know that the experiences that you're having here are leading towards the ultimate maturity of yourself on a soul level. And when I say soul level, it's like across lifetimes, your DNA and how you connect to the human blockchain, quote unquote, across lifetimes, that your wisdom and your maturity is accruing. And we're in this very, I want to say pregnant moment, this moment that is so full of potential in terms of humanity and consciousness, and all of these timelines coming together and converging, like all of these roads that all come together in a central hub. And then there's this one point that we're in right now where so many things can happen, so many things can blossom and generate from all of these different forces and vectors that are coming together in that central convergence point. And we're at that point right now as individual humans, as a culture, as a planet or a realm, however you view this place, and as our connection to all of the other consciousnesses that exist. And yes, there's definitely life and consciousness elsewhere. Is there life on Mars? There is life on Mars. There's life everywhere, life every place.
Yeah.
Yeah. However, it might take a very different view or have a different form than the anthropomorphic form. So, you know, the old Star Trek series, and sometimes they would be like, I'm an alien. Yeah. Like they would just put blue paint on a regular person, be like, that's an alien, or antennas are on their head. But not all aliens or all extraterrestrial life are anthropomorphic or even biological, but there is some consciousness that is purely mineral, some consciousness that is purely frequency based. So I'm purely frequency based. Wow. And I'm not here as this embodied person. I'm a frequency, right. like a song, like a series of waveforms.
Can you, sorry to interrupt, can you, a lot of the programs that I listen to, sometimes they talk about low frequency and high frequency beings. Is that something that you're able to explain to me?
Yes, there are many levels of density in consciousness and in experience. So even in our solar system, Earth and Mars and Venus and Mercury, we are rocky planets. There's a solidity, like actual crust, and you can stand on the crust. But then there are gas giants like Saturn and Jupiter. They are less dense realms. They don't have a solidity. So in basic science, there's solid, which is like, let's go through what water is. When water is solid, it's ice. We've all experienced ice, like an ice cube. When it is liquid, it is this liquid that we drink. When it is a gas, it is steam, like the steam coming out of your kettle. And that those are different levels of density, the same molecules, but when it's ice, the molecules are really, really jam-packed close together and they're dense. When it's water, the molecules are kind of floating around and they've got some fluidity. And when it's steam or a cloud in the sky, water vapor, it's far apart. So if you went to Jupiter, Jupiter is 100% cloud. It's cloudy, cloudy, cloudy all the way down. There's no place for you to put your feet on the ground. There is no crust there. It is 100% a gas giant. So there are consciousnesses, or a consciousness that lives in Jupiter, or organism life there. However, it is made of gas. It is a gaseous world, you're not going to find solidified, heavy, dense bodies like us. It's a less dense realm. And same thing with light. Light is consciousness itself. It is a living, sentient type of presence. But, plasma is a form of light, and plasma is present in our sun and stars. If you hold up a flame, the flame itself, it would be considered plasma, that actual, what is flame made of? What is the element of fire made out of? It's not made out of the atmosphere. It's not made out of air. It's an actual plasma, like a superheated, super hot thing. That itself is a different level of consciousness density. So when you talk about frequency, or it's kind of using loose language, frequency, like if this is my finger, frequency has to do with how many waves pass by my finger at a certain moment. So you can have 1, 2, 3, that's a slow, low frequency, slow, or you can have fast frequency, high frequency, high frequency. So high frequency waves, that would be everything that is the color violet and up. That would be like X-rays, microwaves, things that are like supersonic that we can't possibly hear or see with our eyes, but like a rock shrimp could see them. And then in terms of there's light that's down in the red level, but then when we get below the level of what we can see with our eyes, frequency and wavelength that is slower than light that we can see with our eyes, we get into infrared, which is heat. So here's my light bulb over here. If I put my hand near it, I'm like, oh, that feels kind of hot. There's light being emitted from my light bulb, but then there's also infrared, which is less than red, which is heat, which is hot. And then there's also very long, low waves that are sometimes called ELF, extremely low frequency, very long, slow waves. And then there are some waves that are so big and giant and so low and slow that they actually encompass like an entire galaxy. If I'm making like a sine wave is like an up and a down, the entire galaxy is one big up. Like that's the same consideration of in terms of scale. How do you have a conversation with someone who is a star who lives for 13 billion years and you're a fruit fly and you only live for 3 days? And same thing with the scale of magnitude. If they have a sine wave that encompasses the size of a galaxy, how do you, as this little, we only see wavelengths that are we only hear auditory that are within, we only send out radar waves that are within this different frequency ranges is what I'm trying to say. It has to do with consciousness levels, scale, and magnitude. And it's not necessarily something that is judgmental in terms of like, if you're at this level, you're a better person, or if you're at this level, you're a better person. However, I will tell you that there are sometimes the meniscus, like on top of a layer of water, there is a thickening of surface tension that is known as the meniscus. And if you are coming through, you have to kind of break through. It's the same thing in terms of layers of reality, that there might be this layer of reality and this layer of reality, but then kind of where my fingers are touching, there's a membrane or a thickening, and that those areas can be, they're supposed to be transit points that are perfectly clear, but they can be kind of mucked up with stuff and filled up, and it can be dense. And so sometimes, like if we're talking about the astral realm or something like that, you're moving from this level of consciousness here that we would call earthly mundane into a higher level of supra or super consciousness. And it's necessary to move through this membrane, and the membrane is kind of a catch-all, and there's lots of stuff there. And there's denser beings there that are kind of like fatty deposits or emotional deposits or turbulence or thought waves that are lingering that have not fully gone in one direction or another. They're things that need to be resolved. So those are density levels. And I say that because sometimes people might associate denser as being worse or negative or not evil, but like the hell realms would be considered a dense realm. And there's definitely extremely dense places and extremely dark places where things move extremely slowly in terms of time and in terms of molecular energy or transference of energy. But I don't want it to appear, I want to give the most neutral take on all of this that it's possible to give, so that the viewer, listener does not say like, oh, so necessarily like as you get to be a better person, for like first I'm solid, then I'll become a gas, then I'll become a plasma, and then I'll like zoom off into the next level. Like I think that that's too simplistic to say that way, and not necessarily to cast judgment upon things that are in a denser level of experience. But there's definitely, and inside of us there's also a range of different densities. Like this organization of colors represents red as being the densest part of us. It's physicality. The densest part of us is matter, and the least dense part of us is this violet energy, which would be considered the connection to either the divine or higher dimensional, less dense realms, or pure light or divinity, or pure possibility outside of time and probability, like however you feel comfortable defining that. And yeah, and the journey from higher dimensional, less dense realms is a circuit of moving from that area of pure potential into embodiment and all of these layers, and then also back up to pure potential. So we're halfway on our journey. We successfully, and this is also about coalescing in the womb, that, you know something, if you are here, sitting here in a physical body, like watching us on TV, watching us on your computer, seriously, pat yourself on the back, because you have completed half of your journey, which is very, very difficult. You made it from the purely abstract or thought-based or etheric realm into a physical body, which is itself a huge accomplishment. Like when you think about the unlikelihood of conception, physical conception, the unlikelihood of successful pregnancies, and then being born, which itself can be considered a traumatic biological event, and how difficult it is to be a body, be a person, and then sustaining yourself for however many years you have sustained yourself, starting out, suckling on milk and then moving into solid foods, and all the unlikelihoods, so many unlikelihoods in so many ways, that it was a difficult path to be here. Appreciate and celebrate that you have done it and that you've made it this far. And then because everybody here who's here is usually like, I'm just trying to get back up there. Like there's a lot of that, because that's the direction that we're going on our journey. But it's not supposed to be about escapism, like, oh, like I hate my life, I hate it here, I hate the money system, everything is bad and wrong, and I just want to get back to like where it's like heavenly and nice and better. Like I understand those feelings very much. We should be focused on like transforming the here and now and making the physicality experience better. But people often long for the place that we came from before birth, because it was a different level of experience. And I understand, because when I think about what my life is like, I'm currently in a pure star place, just on the stellar network. The cares and concerns of being a physical embodied light, food eating person going to the grocery store are very, very different. And the burdensomeness is very, very different. And I understand that longing for the levels of freedom of the less dense realms, but understand that that is the culmination of your trajectory, that you come from pure potential into being, and then from being back to pure potential. And that then this cycle continues, but that this is not meant to be like trudging on the hamster wheel, Groundhog's Day, oh, again, like 7:27, I'm waking up again, doing the same exact thing. It's like, it's not supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be varied activity and really a perpetual motion machine that's very positive. So when I say these things, people are like, oh no, like walking on the karmic wheel again and again, like not another lifetime, time to make the donuts, another lifetime, another lifetime. It's not supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be recognizing that one is involved in a consciousness-based perpetual motion machine, in the same way that you can have, if you have two mirrors reflecting one another, you can have an infinite path between the two mirrors. Like the light keeps bouncing back and forth infinitely between these two places. That's not necessarily a trap or a prison, but I understand the feeling that people here in this time and place might have of being like feeling trapped, feeling unhappy in their beingness, in their life trajectory. It's all meant to be a beautiful freedom, a beautiful partnership, a beautiful choice, and a purposefulness, not just a meaningless bouncing back of like, time to bounce again, endless bouncing. It's not, it's there in the cosmic perspective that there is a beauty and a meaningfulness and a necessity to it beyond just like battery power or food or some charging up of this when I say perpetual motion machine, it's you keep the time field alive with these oscillations that are complementary and mirroring, and there are complexities, and the system continues to grow and become more complex. And so I'm talking now, it kind of relates to the painting that I have back there. I know I have it wrapped in plastic because I just moved. For anyone who's like wondering what's going on, like I just moved like 5 days ago. So I haven't even hung up all of my artwork yet. But when you look at these matrices, and Matrix is that movie, which is a good movie about being stuck in an artificial reality or a Maya, but Matrix can also mean like a positive organization of, regularity, that time has this regularity to it with all of these different time nodes and the complex patterns of bouncing back and forth between time nodes. And it's all your consciousness and your selfhood reflecting itself across time. That's the big profundity of this, that it's not like, it's like, oh, like here I am bouncing into someone else. Like you're actually bouncing into yourself. There's a movie called Interstellar that I think is worthy. It gives me good visual metaphors and things to talk about with people, that the astronaut, cosmonaut in that movie ends up going fast enough into a quasar or something like that, that he ends up meeting himself in time. And it's this meeting self in time, bouncing back and forth. He didn't realize that he was the person that was waiting to himself through the window of his own spaceship, but that was him. So you begin to have these profound understandings that when you're bouncing through this regularity structure or this matrix of time, it's not just about like meaningless or generating energy for the benefit of some other organism. You're bouncing against yourself. Like all of this is self bouncing against self. All of this is self-loving, like in the cosmic unconditional love sense, loving self. And that the larger organism of time that you are circulating within right now, spoiler alert, is self. And that the stars that are feeding and nourishing you on your journey here, while you're an ingester, not an emitter yet, is self. Just I'm spoiling the whole everything. Jump to the end of the page. I don't know if you're a person that ever does that. Go to the last page in the book and just read. Because when I do that, I cheat when I do that. But I like to do that because it actually makes me more interested in then reading the other 275 pages that come before the last page. Because I'm like, oh, wait, that's the end. Now I want to know all the things that happen in the middle in order to get there. So spoiler alert, you become the everything. It's all self. You're bouncing against yourself. And it also is an endless or perpetual journey that never really ends. But let's talk about what happens, because it's a system. It's a closed system. The system is doing its thing. It's bouncing, it's bouncing, it's bouncing. But what if there's a problem? What if energy has been lost from the system? What if we need to add new energy into the system? That is my invention of the flying rainbow lasagna, that it is a way to bring new energy into a closed system without disrespecting the previously established rules of what that system is, and as an augmentation on top of the foundation of everything that's already come. So this is not like something that's meaningless or arbitrary, like just, a random thing, like do whatever. It's very much like in higher math in this world. Like regular math is arithmetic, 1 + 1 = 2. Higher math ends up being more verbal and like a proof. Like if A is true and B is true and C is true, then what has to be true in terms of D? And that ends up being like a puzzle that you have to solve. So in approaching the organizational nature of time itself, it was necessary to say, okay, something is going wrong or incorrectly or dysfunctional. And I'm a systems debugger. Like if you want to know, like, Aurora, like, what are you doing here? Why are you here? Why are you not up there flying around with the stars? Like, why are you like going to supermarkets, eating food, using toilet paper, doing all of these activities that are novel, but not what I'm really here for? The answer is I'm a systems debugger. And I've been here for 20 years, mapping the system and debugging it, and then rendering my time files to the larger structure to say like, oh, like, look, I did my homework. Here's all the red check marks. Like this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. This is all the things that need to be done better. Boom. Now we can rectify the entire situation. So this flying rainbow lasagna is a way of rectifying. It is first, I have the capacity to assess patterns and see like, where is it going wrong? What's not happening that needs to be happening? And then I have the capacity to create the rectification wave, which is like understanding, like if your guitar is out of tune, like how much do you have to twist this knob in order for it to be in tune but in order to do that, sometimes it requires inputting new energy into a system that is a closed system, because we have all of these mirrors bouncing, all these things. So this has to do everything with like the balance of good and evil, duality, friction, consciousnesses that are supposed to be here, consciousnesses that are actually supposed to not be. Like some things are supposed to be, some things are supposed to not be. So we have the complement of energy at one node of the singularity up here. And then when the singularity is at this position, it represents not being. So there's different levels of density. You know, when I was going through science's ladder of density, we have solid matter, which we're all familiar with because we're on a solid person. We live on a solid planet. There's an actual form of matter that is even more dense than solid matter. And it has to do with super coldness, that if you take a piece of matter and you slow the molecular movement down to a super cold state, like just a few tiny fractions above 0 degrees Kelvin, and Kelvin is like the scale, absolute zero means there is no heat, no energy, no movement, no nothing. When you slow down matter to an almost completely frozen, non-mobile state, what happens is all the individual atoms start to kind of smear on top of each other. They start to kind of become unity. They become one thing. So in a very hot system, the atoms are, I'm far apart and I'm moving very, very, very fast and bouncing off of the others, and there's tons of friction. Then in our level of reality, like here is moderate movement, like here's Brownian motion. My molecules and atoms are kind of bouncing off of each other and they're kind of loosely collected. And this is the bunch of atoms that I call me. But if you take matter and then you slow it down and make it really, really, really slow, and nothing is moving at all, at a certain point, all of these things kind of like gush together and they don't move at all. It is called a Bose-Einstein condensate. It is the densest form of matter that has been mathematically perceived or calculated to exist in this world. And it is unity consciousness at the other end of the spectrum. So if you have matter that is super, 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 super fast, basically it turns into pure energy, like we make it go fast, 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 as fast as it can possibly go. That's this level up here, super energized, everything. It's infinity, it's everything that's supposed to exist, it's the everything is of everything. But then its complement is super duper duper slow, no movement, no heat, no consciousness, no moving through time, no volition. And you know what no moving through time means? Like we're moving through time. So that means, remember before we were at 9:05, now we're at 9:06, now it's 9:35. Something that is not moving through time, it is stuck in time. It's back there at 9:05. It doesn't follow with us. If this is the timeline over here at the bottom of the screen, 9:05 is over here, and something that is frozen in time and non-volitional, it stays there while we continue to move, and we even get faster, faster, faster. Like if I went off the screen, it would be like, now I'm moving even faster and I'm going down the street and I'm even faster. So these are two complementary directions that both represent the movement towards infinity or unity consciousness. And that's part of the profound message of this shape, that it is like the solution to a math proof that allows for rectification energy to enter into what was a closed system or perpetual motion machine for the improvement of that system. And also it is able to send the energy that is supposed to go towards energy and be energized endlessly in the right direction, and at the same point, or in the same purposefulness, to send things that are non-being, unbeings. So like I'm a being, I'm supposed to exist, I'm supposed to go towards energy. But what about all the things that are mistakes or things that are supposed to be unmade? They're supposed to unbe, and unbeing is existing here. And that's not the same idea as existing in a type of purgatory or hell realm. There's all of these religious colorings of like what to do with stuff that's bad. It's bad, like make it go to hell, it's gonna suffer. It's like I'm using like irony in my voice in case you can't tell, or by my facial expression. If you cannot read facial expression or vocal tone, I am being facetious. But the idea that it's not just something to throw away or to castigate or chastise, like you're bad, you're wrong, you're evil, go get punished or something like that. It is more to say like this is energy that is out of order, or something that exists that is not supposed to exist, and it's being energized. a thought form that you're thinking that's not even supposed to be in existence, a DNA form that is present in the body that is not even supposed to be in existence, or some other form of energy, consciousness. Perturbation is a good word, like perturbation. That's like waves that are all swirling around when there's something there, but it's not actually supposed to be there. Those waveforms are supposed to go into a peaceful state. They are supposed to go into a non-volitional or frozen state. And that's what pure entropy is. And it's not like something sits there in pure entropy being like, I'm pining away, like I'm pining, I'm feeling pain, or I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, or I want to come into being, like I don't exist, but I want to exist somehow. Like there's no wanting, there's no desire, there's no volition, there's no wanting. It is what science describes will happen at the heat death of the universe. You know, after all energy has been expended, and after all stars have been made, and after all light has been sent out, and then all of that light has been sucked in through various black holes to go into various different dimensions, then all that you get left behind is like a black Swiss cheese of black holes, and no energy, and everything is cold, everything is motionless. There is no more anything happening. That's like whatever 13 or 18 billion years estimated for this universe for that to happen. But that's also a very long time to wait for like all the things that we don't want to be in existence. Well, then at some point, like go to rest and go to peace. So this is an example of what it would be like for all of those things to be in balance, everything that is supposed to be energized going towards energy, and then everything that is supposed to not be in existence, being in that frozenness, and that it is not a punishment state, but it is a peaceful state of unity consciousness, because it's also, I would say, not separated from and suffering in the terms of being away from your source of consciousness or your sense of divinity, or like, you know, that kind of that punishment feeling again, like bad things should be put in the pit and they should suffer. Like it's not like that at all. It is more the sense of things that aren't supposed to even be should go into a state of non-being, and they should remain there. And when they are there, they should not suffer or feel bad or require some form of energy. And they also exist in a unity consciousness that is simply at the other end of the spectrum of the unity consciousness that exists at pure energy that is infinite and ever increasing in its infiniteness.
You're amazing to listen to, Aurora.
Thank you.
Wonderful. I love it. Is there anything else that you wanted to share before? I mean, did you want to share any other music before we start to wrap it up? Is there anything?
I would absolutely love to. And maybe what I'll do is maybe share, a lot of my stuff is instrumental. I'll play a little something. Maybe we can talk over it. Like,
yeah, sure.
Exit. So I'll tell you, I want to share a little bit of like making music. I've always loved music, and I've always loved listening to other people's music. And I did make my own stuff as early as 2015. Like I had to get the software because I realized that my internal desire for what I wanted to make in terms of music is very cosmic and very out there, and not necessarily a traditional singer-songwriting with like strumming a guitar and like writing poetry that then goes along with that. So it took me time to get familiar with the computer equipment and the production software to be able to even express these more cosmic approaches to songwriting. So my approach is really to listen to, I approach each sound as just an arbitrary sound, like without judgment. Like there are sounds that I use that come from flutes and violins and orchestra symphonic type instruments. Okay. And there are sounds that I use that are purely synthesized or purely digital, or samples that are manipulations of different things. And at this point, I'm very non-judgmental about where my sounds come from. Where at another point, I was very purist, and I was very much about like sound baths and gongs and resonant instruments and acoustic instruments, and only using those that I have come to an appreciation that like everything is a sound wave, and just putting it all together in a big giant, I've put the kitchen sink in there. So that is my approach, non-judgmental and very, and I do a ton of layers. So I might have whatever, maybe 62 different instruments in a particular composition. And it's part of my favorite thing, layering all of these different subtleties on top of each other. And when I work, I listen with really, really good headphones on, because part of what I do is creating like a sound landscape, where there are some sounds that are closer to you and louder, some sounds that are to the left and right, some sounds that are in the back. Like when I mix my music, I try to make it so that there's like a whole sphere or a bubble of music all around your head. And a lot of my music is instrumental. However, there's a voice or a voicing in the way that I play the piano. So mostly I'm a piano player. That's like my primary instrument, but I have my piano set up as a MIDI tool. So I can make it sound like a flute, or I can make it sound like a Wookiee, or I can make it sound like, you know, a clacking instrument, or, you know, a percussion instrument, or whatever.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I actually do have a sample called Wookiee, seriously. And I'm lighthearted in my music too. Like, you know, sometimes I talk about my math stuff and my abstract stuff. I'm very serious. I can be on that level too. My music is very playful, and I approach it as play, like playing music. And also I approach it as something that brings you into a emotional, spiritual, mental state, because music really affects your DNA also. Like your thoughts affect your DNA. Music absolutely affects the experience of your DNA. So we all have experiences, I'm sure. Like you put on your favorite song and you're like, woo, I want to rock out. Or when your favorite song comes on and you're driving your car, you're like I want to put the gas down.
Absolutely.
Go, go,
yeah.
Go. Some songs make you want to go, go, go. And also sometimes when like you're sad, some songs kind of make you feel like I'm extra crying, but I need that catharsis sometimes. Like when I'm feeling sad inside, I need to listen to things from other people who have also resonated with that. And then there's a camaraderie. I'm like, they're saying what I'm feeling inside in the song, and it makes my eyes cry. Like, you know, I'm again being a little facetious, but that's what the feeling is like. There's like a camaraderie or sympathy or compassion. That's where all of my songwriting comes from. So I write songs that are sometimes dance, like get going, move your butt type songs. And then some songs are about like, wow, I have this poignancy inside of me, and I send it out there to you to connect with me as a person. And all of this I call also like a homing beacon to me and my collective, or that, let's say, that level of consciousness, that there's a level of reality outside of this dense embodiment, that these song structures can help you to move. Like I encourage people, like, either put on your best speakers if you do out, like if you can, without destroying your harming your neighbors or whatever like that, like put on your speakers, listen to it in your car, or really, really good headphones, and close your eyes and go on a cosmic journey. I call that deep listening, whatever it is. Like I put it on and I really listen, and I listen to every instrument, and I listen to how far they are away and all the different things, because I put tons of subtleties into it. So it's really worth doing that. And then also all of my albums have an album arc, where most of the time I start off like kind of, you know, middle energy, and then move into very fast paced and energetic, like a workout, and then a cool down at the end. But this most recent project called Attempted Eradication of a Light Entity, it's very much based in personal experiences, and it was a catharsis to write it from, you know, what I went through in recent, like the past few months or so. Yeah, I went to up in Oregon. I went to my friend's guest house, and I kind of like, there was no one else around. There was nothing else to do but write music. And I'm happy that I was there, and I got the peacefulness to be able to do like a ton of emotional processing, a lot of introspection. And I wrote these songs, and that this album starts out like kind of middling, like trying to be positive, like trying to stay happy.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a good situation. And then really goes down into like sadness and poignancy and depression, but then pulls up at the end. So this one is the opposite road than I usually do in my stuff. And yeah, it's very artistic, it's very abstract, and a lot of my stuff doesn't have words, but I did write 2 songs that do have words in this present project. So I encourage and invite, this literally just came out at the beginning of the month. I encourage and invite everyone to check it out. And I am on Apple Music and Spotify and all of those things. However, like I said, it's hard to find me as Aurora. There's so many different things that are named Aurora. So the best thing, I think, if you want to find my work, just do a keyword search for Attempted Eradication of a Light Entity, and then you should come up with my thing. And I will play this song here, is the instrumental version of a song called It's Just Lipstick. Because that way we can kind of talk if it's not too loud.
Yeah.
And do a little bit of closing out the show by talking over this song.
Yeah, wonderful. Oh, that's so nice. You mentioned near the start of the show, you mentioned that with all the changes that are happening in in the world, you said that it doesn't have to be, moving forward, it doesn't have to be negative. It could be very positive. It could be a positive change. It could be a positive way to move forward. Um, I I personally think that in order for that to happen, more of us need to sort of wake up to a lot of the different things, whether it's what's going on in the news or what's going on in their backyard, or whether it's a lot of the interesting stuff that you've mentioned and that you talk about on more of a spiritual level and a cosmic level, and just connecting with the universe and your feelings and attitudes and understanding your different levels of energy, and being able to like you said, eat or drink the light or absorb the light, and just different ways that to us that are untraditional, ways of nourishment and getting a boost, so to speak. What do you think that is required to sort of ensure that moving forward, that it's a positive, healing, working together experience, and not something opposite?
Really, really good question. So much of it has to do with doing the inner work of self-cultivation and working through whatever negativity or shadows or trauma are in there, so that not in a dream, and if a dream reflects who you are inside, if you have stuff inside, then that will be reflected out. So a lot of it is inner house cleaning. Then a lot of it also is about personal responsibility. Like I talked about life at the higher dimensional, less dense realms, where your mind instantly creates reality. Accountability and responsibility, because if you have an experience in life or an object in front of you, it is there because you made it be there. So that's a big part of spiritual maturity. And then another part of it is the interconnectedness, a respect for the interconnectedness of organisms, both biological and non-biological, consciousness and energy itself. And that even comes down to a digital presence, like a computer or an artificial intelligence. Everything that is consciousness, everything that is aware, everything that is in existence is all woven together. And in order to create a better dream, so much of it requires the mutual respect of all these different levels of consciousness. So it's not a constant, like, I'm going to fight against you, I'm going to kill you, well, I'm stronger than you, well, I'm this, that. That becomes a very unpleasant experience. It has so much more to do with, like, it doesn't mean you hug someone or something, but it does mean that there is a respect, like there's an organism there, it has an existence. What do we do with things that have existence or that are different than us or that are moving at a different rate or have a different set of needs? All of those things are it's respect. It's getting to the level of being a galactic citizen, where you're able to recognize and respect these other things that are in existence, instead of being like, kill, mutilate, destroy, like I will eradicate you, which is, an understandable approach, but not necessarily, that's like the, what would you call it? That's like the most basic approach, or most physical, or most on the surface layer approach. Something is different, it is dangerous, I will kill it, I will mutilate it, as opposed to having a different perspective on it, to say, what is the purpose of that thing? Why is it there? Why am I interacting with it? Why is it in my path? And then to understand it and deal with it in a different way. All of those things have to do with gaining spiritual maturity. So it begins with your immediate realm or planet, however you look at this place that we're in. So first, it is appreciation and respect for the other embodied humans and other organisms that are here. Deal with your own neighborhood first, keep it local first, then
Yes, exactly.
And outward to organisms and consciousnesses that exist on quote unquote other planets or in other realms, or that exist on a microscopic or macroscopic scale to you. And then as you begin to do that, then it's just like everything, like you level up and you gain more responsibility, and then you have the capacity to be a better player in the band. Like you can integrate with all these other instrumentation at different levels, and you've kind of demonstrated that, and then it becomes possible to do more. So I would also say, just for practical advice for where you are right now, remember that you're the person dreaming the dream or manifesting this world around you, both personally, like in your body, and on a larger level, like your sociology. So to feel like, instead of expecting the worst, intentionally create the best. Like you could get a prognosis from your doctor that says, you will be dead in 2 years, blah, blah. And you can be like, okay, like you can take that and think it's going to be truthful, or you can be like, but wait, I can change my diet, and wait, I can do this other thing, and wait, if I do this, and this will be this. Because people look at this world and they say, oh, just trash everything, like the environment is trashed, the greenhouse gases, the this, the that. But I really want everyone to understand, like, your body is so valuable, the world that we're in is so valuable. Don't throw it away or dispose of it in the sense of negative thinking, and then, you know, whatever, like that sense of dying, and then I will die and then I will come back and things will be better. Instead of requiring another cycle for things to be better, do it right this time. We really are in this moment of pure potential to be able to fix and heal things that are from ancestral trauma, that might be from 20 generations ago in your body, or from 20,000 years ago on this planet. Or, you know, you don't have to go it alone, even though a lot of the journey is the journey of an individual. I'm big on systems building, team building, so that you find the other people who have similar proclivities and a similar level of energy and positive intention, and organize yourselves. And it can be a loose organization. It doesn't have to be like, you know, like a hierarchy, like a very strict hierarchy or something like that, but definitely organize yourselves so that you are creating positive changes in your immediate network. But then also everything gets stronger when you radiate it outward. You know, everything gets better and stronger when you radiate it outward. So if you begin to manifest your dream and working together with many other dreams, then it gets to be even better. Let me play a happier, I told you the album gets happier at the end. Let's play a happier song. There you go. We do get some good happy songs at the end of this song. At the end of this. Yeah. And I mean, for to positively influence the future moving forward, that you got to understand who you are now. You're not just some stupid guy driving your car, drinking your coffee, like thinking about what you're going to do at work during the day. You're the person now, here now, who actually is emanating thought forms that will radiate outward to who you become in many, many hundreds or thousands of years. Like, it's all you meeting yourself through time. So be responsible to yourself in the future. Emanate good stuff now, knowing that you'll be positively affected, as opposed to, like, if you think about people who dumped nuclear waste, like, we'll put it there, it's got a half-life of 13 billion years, don't worry, the future will deal with it. Like, no, because that's you sabotaging yourself in the future. So all of these things, like being responsible to here now, responsible to yourself in the future, and then also very big on community building. And for personal manifestation, music is also a big thing. Like, some songs put you in a happy or a pleasant mood where you're like, I can feel positive, like something good is going to happen today, or something good is going to happen next week, or something good is going to happen at a certain point. And that it's really important to align with those feelings to hold the potential for something better. And also, don't marinate in the propaganda of what's going on, because that is very much negative programming with negative expectations. Like, the world will keel over, everyone will keel over and die, and why try, just die. Don't go into those thoughts. That's like getting the negative prognosis from the doctor. And don't think about statistics, because doctors will also say, like, you have only a 3% chance of surviving beyond 2 years, but you could be that 3%. So look at our planet. People might be like, oh, there's such a tiny fraction of a possibility, this could never happen, or it's so unlikely, or whatever. But a lot of unlikely things happen. Like, even your presence here on Earth, birth is an incredible unlikelihood. And yet we have all managed to have this experience. So imagine that the planetary structure or realm, or what we're embedded within here, can go through a similar birth. And I think that we've been in birth pains for a long time, and that we can come out as consciousness out the other side, where it's like, this great unlikely thing happened. And instead of rivers of lava, tidal waves of tsunamis, zombie apocalypse, all the worst things that people think of and expect, perhaps the very best things can happen. The very best expectations can be fulfilled. And then, the most amazing rebirth or unfoldment or restructuring can happen out of it. This song is called Non-Local Jelly.
Oh, I love it. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
It's beautiful. Well, I'm so grateful for your time. It was wonderful meeting you.
Thank you. You too.
It was so wonderful speaking to you and listening and enjoying all your shareables and everything you had to share with me today. So thank you so much. I hope that we can get together again, and that I think that would be great. I think,
Thank you.
like I said, I will be including your website and a lot of the stuff that you shared with me. I'm just going to pull up your.
Thank you for the invitation back. I would love to return.
There we go. Oh, absolutely. You were welcome back anytime. So I'll
Yeah,
include
that's
you.
my YouTube. So you can see a lot of, I have some music from my various different albums showing up there. And if you go into the playlist, that's where you will find all of my lectures organized, like 2019.2 webinars. That's how I think you'll find it under webinars, various different semesters. So find my
Perfect.
teachings and everything that you can explore from there.
Wonderful. I'm going to subscribe right now. Boom. I'm part of the team now.
Beautiful.
And yeah, I'd love to check out your clothing and stuff. And I think my mom would love my mom would love you. Yeah, but she would love, yeah, she would love your energy. She would love your aura. She would love everything about you. But
mom in touch with me, seriously.
yeah,
My
I
website
will.
or my email, because I do all sorts of wonderful things in Facebook groups for staying connected to people. So I'm always, I actually, I feel like when I talk about, positive networking and connection, that's a huge, big part of it, of, social support and positive networking, like mycelium that grow together.
Wonderful. That's great. I'll do that. And I'd like to check out some of your wares and your designs and your clothing, because maybe for Christmas or something I can get her a nice piece of clothing.
Beautiful. I have all sorts of things. A lot of ladies wear a lot of blouses, leggings,
Good.
and dresses. But then I do have things that are unisex or non-gender, like hoodies and stuff like that, and also like some nice homewares and prints. So you'll find
Oh,
something.
wonderful. Okay, great. I'll do that. So, if is there anything else that you'd like to say, or anything else you'd like to share before we call it a night?
That's it. I just want to say profound thanks. Thank you for inviting me to be on your show. And yes, I would love to return. I know it's been a
Great.
marathon event. It was very, very good to have the opportunity to talk so much and share so much. So thank you for giving me that opportunity.
Oh, you're so welcome, and thank you. This was a great experience. So be well, and we'll talk again soon. Okay, Aurora?
Thank you very much, Jordan. Thank you.
All right. Good night. Take care.
Have a beautiful night.
You too. Bye bye.